All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's do it. Let's blast off. There's a lot to talk about, obviously. Trump destroys DOE. Hire me as a social media manager? What are you talking about? All I do is social media management. Hire me as a social media manager. Yeah, let me give you my stream key real quick and my passwords. All right, Trump destroys Department of Education. Bernie plus AOC rally recap. Trump, Elon gets the China war plans. New merch line dropped today. Get in now. What in the hell is that bottle? It's cold brew concentrate. I dilute it with water and I drink it straight to the dome. Why is shipping so much? I don't know, dude. Why are you asking me these questions? I genuinely don't have any idea or any knowledge of how any of that stuff works. That's why I work with a company that handles all that. Hire me to be chill and hang out? No, I'm good. Thank you. You can trust me because I don't care enough this life to be malicious about things or towards people. Trust you with what? DOE is the Department of Energy. The ED is the Department of Education. I know. I said DOED instead. You know what? I'm going to edit it. Education. I was on MPO. Why don't you know this, Papa Abi? What do you mean? I do know that. I know DOE's Department of Energy. That's why I said DOED. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you should shout out your merch on your community comments on YouTube. Maybe. Yo, they banned a scientist from coming into your country. I know, the French one. I know. Also, that's not how you spell scientist, but it's funny. Yeah. Bro, we need the Department of Education more than ever before, okay? We need scientists more than ever before, and we need a Department of Education more than ever before. Like, there's dudes in here that don't know how to type scientist, dude. Oh my God. We are so cooked. Open the schools. Open the schools immediately, okay? Do you see Al Jazeera got value-tained? What do you mean? Patrick Bet-David went on Al Jazeera? They recently chained a Canadian Hannibal Lecter style. Even if she had a visa, she only got released because the media attention it got. Nice. That's great. Very cool stuff. All right, let's get it twisted. Let's get it started. There's so much to talk about. Trump takes questions from reporters after announcing fighter jet contract. He's finally giving Boeing a new fighter jet contract. He's trying to save Boeing. I guess we'll start there. Dropside is a story about innocent Venezuelan goalkeeper that got deported to El Salvador. Yeah, I covered. There's a new story like this every day, basically. Basically every day, there's another insane story like this one from the Trump administration that is seemingly working on basically deporting whoever they can with no care or consideration to their background, no care or consideration on whether or not these people are actually even remotely criminal at all, where they're from originally. You know, they're just, oh, no matter where you're from, you're going to El Salvador, you're going to the slave labor camp. Doesn't really matter. And we just keep finding out that, I mean, this is like accelerated war on terror stuff, because a lot of Americans are probably not aware. A lot of Americans are probably not aware of this, but like, this is, if you were in like Dearborn, right? Post 9/11, this is what they would do to you. If you were like a random Muslim guy, the government kind of did this, not to the same severity, not to the same degree. Like, the numbers are much higher now, but they definitely would just be like the principles were kind of similar, where they would be like, yeah, you're a terrorist. We have suspicion that you're a terrorist. You're going to Guantanamo Bay. We're basically going to torture you, right? They'd be like, oh, you're, third cousin, once removed, once was in the direction of Afghanistan, once sneezed on the border of Afghanistan. He's Al Qaeda, and so are you. You're going to Gitmo. Now there isn't even like any association whatsoever. They're just like, oh, we saw a tattoo and you were doing like a, yeah, hell yeah, rock sign. You're a part of a gang that we have now declared a terrorist gang that's doing terrorism, and you're going to not Gitmo, but this time you're going directly to, you're no longer going to Gitmo. You're going to El Salvador, the for-profit slave labor prison. It is truly repulsive. It's truly terrifying. And it seems like Americans are, kind of sleepwalking through this process. Like, they're walking in the direction. Maybe they're goose-stepping in the process in that direction. It seems like they're, yeah. It's not even a sleepwalk. It's more so a goose step, really, where I'm seeing a lot of people champion this administration's truly repulsive and truly insane behavior. Yeah. So that is where we're at in the Burger Reich. And there is a lot of fear in the air. There's a lot of instability in the air. There's a lot of understandable anger and resentment in the air. All of that and more. But yeah, that is where we're at. So New York Times reporting that a highly secret game plans for potential war for China. Yeah, I know. I saw that. We'll talk about that too. But let's get started. Trump takes questions from reporters after announcing fighter jet contract.
To be serviced much better than it has in the past. It's been a mess.
Hassan, maybe talk about what we can do. Dude, I don't know where to begin with this because this dovetails into the Bernie AOC conversation as well. Okay? The only thing I can tell you at this stage is to protect your own, know your rights, and explain to other people, especially people that are marginalized, especially people that are, for example, could potentially be. Hold on. Doors open. Doors open. Okay. Dude, Murad is here, and there is so much motion happening in this house right now. I like my little primitive brain cannot handle the in and outs. It's just like him and his buddy are here. I think he wants to go biking or something, and it's just like, oh my God. All right. In terms of what to do, what is to be done, I think that this is the time to organize to the best of your ability and defend people in your immediate vicinity. Try to shelter them to the best of your ability from these kinds of government actions. And that's it. Like, I don't know. I don't have any real answers besides you have to organize. You have to make sure that you know your rights. You have to make sure that other people know their rights. And don't open the fucking door for ICE agents. Like, that's it. Get to know your neighbors. Join DSA. Join PSL. There are a lot of organizations out there. Try to get people to become more aware of what this administration is doing. It's a unique time, I think, for American history, where for even the past couple of decades, while things have gotten significantly worse year over year, it has never been it's never been this glaringly obvious, the erosion of civil liberties. Like, it's been a slow burn, and I think this is like the final, the logical conclusion to all of this harm. And it's understandable that people are frustrated in this moment. And I think I get the frustration that even leftists have on Twitter, even people in my community have with AOC and Bernie, which are now throwing these rallies together. And I've thought about that as well. I've thought about like what they can do, what they must do. Because if all of these rallies and if all of this awareness campaign is simply to just like sheepdog people back into the Democratic Party without the Democratic Party being genuinely changed, like structurally changed in its entirety, in its direction, in its focus, in its policy making capabilities, and in the ways that the Democrats actually fight back against the Trump administration, unless the Democratic Party is drastically changed and restructured to have a bold, dare I say, radical vision of change that they follow through on, where the AOCs and the Bernie Sanderses of the Democratic Party are like the centrists, okay? Where they come across as like, and there are people that are to the left of Bernie and AOC within the Democratic Party, as you guys know, when it comes to foreign policy, for example. Like, if that does not happen, then we're cooked. We're completely cooked. I don't think AOC and Bernie are trying to sheepdog people, to be fair. I don't think that is like the classic take from Hammer Sickle Twitter, is the notion that like these people want to be a structural hurdle to a third party. They're not being genuine. They just want to like cut the progressive momentum, cut the wind from its sails, and like move them or redirect them back into the Democratic Party to fundraise for the Democrats. And I don't think that that is the case. I think what they're trying to do is to showcase to the rest of the Democrats that there is broad popular momentum behind these kinds of initiatives, behind like advocating for change in a way that average neoliberal Dems will consider to be radical, but that radical change is actually not so radical. It's common sense, right? That's the Bernie meta. He's been saying that for years and years, and that's why he's so effective as a communicator, and that's why he's so popular. That's why he has broad popular momentum, as we've seen over and over again. And I think these rallies are not so much to bring people together and then immediately direct them to a point of action, but instead, at least in this phase, it's to show the Democrats, the rest of the Democrats, that like if you do this, like you have to do stuff like this to basically change the structure of the party. Otherwise, it's cooked. Otherwise, you are cooked. Now, having said that, will that be successful? I don't think so. And I've been thinking quite a bit about what they could be doing more than what they're doing right now. And I think having issue focus in the organizing would possibly be a better idea for both AOC and Bernie Sanders. This is something I've talked about quite a bit. This is something I've thought about quite a bit. Because if they were issue specific in their rallies, in their organizing, I think that would be a little bit more that would be a little bit more impactful, right? What do I mean by this? Organize with a union directly outside of a work stoppage. Organize around the Mahmoud Khalil situation. Organize with teachers and do a rally specifically for teachers, like issue specific rallies. I think could perhaps be a little bit better to demonstrate messaging discipline. These are the types of things that they have done. Like Bernie has certainly done this many, many times over. Bernie used to do trips to Canada from Vermont. He would bring all these old people together, and they would literally go to Canada to get cheap pharmaceuticals. So Bernie is not a stranger to doing stuff like this, because it not only demonstrates messaging discipline, but it also shows like a very specific issue that has to change. And it also basically shows like not that far away, across the pond, across the invisible border right there, they have people that are doing it better in terms of pharmaceutical pricing. So it's a win-win-win. You're helping people. You're also getting your message across. You're showing real tangible results, and you're genuinely changing people's lives for the better in the process. It's a perfect idea. It's a perfect way to do it. And I think that they need to do a little bit more on that front. Perhaps they need to do a little bit more on that front. I think that would put a more positive spin, because I saw that even in the rally itself. These people are excited to hear Bernie. They're excited to hear AOC. They like Bernie Sanders. They like AOC. And even at the rally itself, there were people who were like, what should we do? Like, people kept saying, what can we do? What should we do? And I think that's important.
Conscious, becoming conscious.
Yeah. I think organizing is important, but I think we have to also mobilize on top of organizing. Because the reality of the matter is there's a lot of discontent for the Republicans, and there's a lot of discontent for the Democrats as well. There's a lot of anger and resentment towards the congressional Democrats as well. Here's Kaisa, who is a Hasanabi head who sometimes posts the kawaii memes, says, bro, I'm at a congressional town hall and people are heated and basically begging for leadership from Democrats and wondering why nothing on the news or social media represents them. Oh God, the congressperson said he believes in decorum. Someone said that's the problem. Yeah. People, I think, are angry. They're arriving at the position that people in this community have had for quite some time. Like, this is the anger, this is the frustration that I've had for years with the Democrats, right? Fight back against these fucking Republicans. Actually follow through on an agenda that genuinely changes people's lives in a positive way. Demonstrate messaging discipline. Associate with like a select few legislative agenda items that are successful, popular, and keep repeating it over and over and over again. Hammer that point across. and then do everything you can to push that legislative agenda. And I think the Democrats have never done that, but people are finally waking up to the reality that the Democrats are not doing that, and they're very, very angry. I guess the example I will use, is Zoran in New York. He's running for the New York mayoral race, and he has done a phenomenal job with this. Obviously, he's not getting enough media attention, enough mainstream media attention. And unfortunately, the New York mayoral race, much like every other goddamn race, is like hard locked by mainstream outlets. Hard locked by mainstream outlets, and when you don't get a lot of media attention, like the amount of like media attention and institutional like machine Democrats, the amount of power machine Democrats have, like Andrew Cuomo, where they could just like immediately organize a rally and bring in like a bunch of key unions is something that a lot of people don't recognize. Like fighting the good fight. You platforming Zoran can possibly get him in the race? No, I'm going to do that. I'm probably going to fly to New York because I don't want to do it over Discord. Like they want to link up over Discord. I don't want to link up over Discord. I want to do something in person. Like this is one of the few instances where he's been on CNN, but that's not enough. You know what I mean? What I'm talking about is machine politics. A lot of you guys are maybe even, no matter how knowledgeable you are about politics, you probably don't see a lot of the invisible ways in this, in the invisible ways in which machine politics works in New York, right? Michael from Pennsylvania can give you guys an even better inside look into this with Pennsylvania specifically. But like, I'll give you an example. I didn't really cover it, but like Andrew Cuomo was entertaining running in the New York mayoral race for quite some time. He kept saying, he kept dipping his toes in. He kept saying like, oh, I'm going to run. Will I run? Probably. You know, they would send out feelers, and every time they sent out feelers, the media would cover it because Andrew Cuomo is a person who is obviously very famous. Now, he was unceremoniously kicked out of his gubernatorial position for doing a metric ton of sexual harassment over the course of many, many years. But what's interesting about that was the first rally that he held. Do you want to know the first rally that Andrew Cuomo held after saying he was going to run for mayor? It was a Women for Cuomo rally, okay? These are the protesters that were outside of the Women for Cuomo rally, but that's the reality. He did he went and he did a fucking Women for Cuomo rally. And he got a bunch of powerful women in New York to link up with him, okay? And then here's another thing that they did. Here's another thing that he did. They held another rally the next day with unions for Cuomo, right? To present himself as like pro-labor union. They went to that rally. A bunch of union rank and filers were at this rally, right? Turns out a bunch of smart labor reporters went in and asked them, like, what are you doing here? And they were like, I don't know. My union said that this was like a meetup. And I believe that they were giving benefits for attending it. And they had no idea that it was like a pro-Cuomo rally. Yeah, it was the Carpenters Union Hall in New York. So like this is the type of stuff that Andrew Cuomo has the power to do. This is what I mean when I say machine politics works in incredibly nefarious ways, where if you were basically in charge of New York politics, that entire machine for quite a while, you have the opportunity to go to union leadership, find union leaders that are on board with your agenda because you'll give them some kind of legal kickback when you're in power once again. So you can just like call up favors and have those union leaders bring in rank and filers to do a fucking photo op. All the while, the media carries on the message. Look, women are not that angry at Andrew Cuomo. Maybe he's just Italian and maybe he wasn't doing sexual harassment to every woman that was in his vicinity, right? So this is how it works. This is how it works. This is a disgusting machine. This is a machine run by vultures and lecherous perverts. And they have no interest in any of the issues that they advocate for. And people who do have a genuine interest in making change for for the working class. Those are the people that unfortunately get owned in the process. And Zoran is a perfect example of this. I don't think he will, right? I don't think he will get owned in this process, but like, it's always a hard fight. And when people ask about AOC, for example, like, how did she sneak in? She snuck in. That's how she got the role. She was able to destroy the what is it, like the head of the Treasury? I think he's like the third most powerful Democrat in Congress, because he was in a safe district. He thought he was totally safe. He thought there was no way that he could get primaried. And that's precisely how AOC was able to win. That's precisely how the initially. Whoa, what? What the hell was that? What just happened? Did it F? It was a mini F? Okay. Anyway, just as Democrats were able to secure a bunch of W's in primaries all around the country because they were able to basically showcase, honestly, who they were at a time when people were obviously resentful of establishment party politics, but in a way where the Democratic Party was not expending resources. So the safer the seat, the bluer the district, the easier it is for a progressive person to actually undermine undermine the Democratic establishment candidate, no matter how safe they feel they are. But the more people focus their attention into these smaller races, the more money gets dumped into it, the more mainstream media focuses on these little races every now and then, the harder it gets for genuine progressive left candidates to win these races. And I think Zoran has a really big hill to climb in this regard. Does that make sense? It's not just about individual donors and fundraising, chatters. I'm telling you right now, okay? It's not about that. It's not about that at all. I don't think you understand how much play you get from earned media. How much play you get from earned media when MSNBC is talking about Andrew Cuomo every fucking day. CNN's talking about Andrew Cuomo every day. I don't think you get it. Like, mainstream media, especially in races like this, still matter quite a bit, because most normies that would love Zoran's ideas, Zoran's opinions, like, they're not going out and voting. A lot of people are not going to vote in the New York mayoral race. And the ones that do are just going to go for name recognition. Like, a big chunk of people are just going to go for name recognition, the rank choice, and they're going to go, okay, I know Andrew Cuomo. Isn't he a sex pest? I don't know. Whatever. Boom. He's number one. Like, that's usually how it works. He has all the energy. I'm not being defeatist at all. I think he has a good shot. I'm just simply explaining to you how hard it is for someone like Zoran to win a race like the New York mayoral race. Okay? That's precisely the reason why I want to link up with him and help him in any way I can. So that's where the situation is. And I think that there are also a lot of people that there's like spoilers on the ticket there for Zoran, just like there's spoilers. There's the Eric Adams, Andrew Cuomo knife fight, which is good because it's like vote splitting there. And then there's also the Brad Lander Zoran kind of fight. And it seems like Greg Kazar actually, Greg Kazar went and endorsed Brad Lander for mayor. And Brad Lander, in other circumstances, would be fine, right? If Zoran wasn't in the race, then he's like a fine candidate in comparison to everybody else, okay? But with Zoran in the race, he is not fine, okay? Not only does he have no motion, but every progressive, in my opinion, should be pumping Zoran as hard as they possibly could. I know ranked choice voting makes vote splitting less of an issue. Yes, I understand that. But there's still, you should still endorse and offer name recognition to the best of your ability to the top contender in this regard. And I think that, like, this is a major mistake. Going and endorsing Brad Lander is a major mistake. In my opinion, it's because Brad Lander is not anti-Israel and Zoran is. No, I know. The Israel stuff is like, I know a lot of people, I think, especially liberals, like the broader liberal movement, does not think that, like, Palestine is all that prescient of an issue. But because it is at the intersection of so many glaringly obvious inequalities and so many forms of systemic oppression, whether it be Western imperialism, whether it be racism, whether it be Islamophobia, that I think a lot of people just like a lot of people discount how important the issue is for so many different factors. Like the Democrats really need to drop this Israel shit, like this unconditional pro-Israel shit, especially at a time when Israel is not so popping, okay, for understandable reasons. Like, it is very, very dumb and very, very short-sighted, and it is classic. It's classic Democratic Party cowardly behavior. Anyway, yo, you got so political, Hasanabi. I started watching you for your basketball skills and your cute dog. Yeah, sometimes I get a little political around these parts. Yeah, you already know what it is. So union members were this is what I was talking about earlier. Union members were asked to attend a rally at Carpenter's headquarters to support our union without being told it was in fact a rally for Cuomo's campaign. Here's the text blast sent out to union members a few days ago. District Council 9, brothers and sisters, we are attending a rally event at Sunday 3-2 at 10 a.m. This rally will count for the March VOC for painters and tapers. Come out and support your union. Please share this message and remember to bring your DC9 ID. Text stop to opt out. Like, they didn't even tell him that this was a fucking Cuomo rally. It's so gross. The other reason why I'm talking about Zoran is because I think he is doing all of the right things. He has a tremendous hurdle to clear here because it's a race that a lot of people are paying attention to because it's a race that has national significance. New York is a major city. Obviously, that's not the reason. That's not the only reason why this has national significance. There are a lot of players in this that are nationally known figureheads, whether it be Eric Adams or whether it be Andrew Cuomo. So that is the reason why Zoran not having a lot of the same instruments at his disposal in the way that, for example, Andrew Cuomo has. He has a major hurdle to clear here in a race that has a lot of players that have more name recognition than him. Obviously, this is in our circle. We know about him, right? Because he's been doing a great job. But not every single person in here lives in New York, right? In terms of like winning the mayoral race in New York, there's a lot of people. There are a lot of people you got to talk to.
The city needs someone to lead it that is willing to fight the Trump administration, not collaborate with it in the manner of Eric Adams or that which Andrew Cuomo is running.
I think what the general public sees is a Democratic Party that is more interested in defending people like Mahmoud Khalil than they are victims of crime here in New York City, than they are Jewish students who have been subjected to vile anti-Semitism across these college campuses and universities, or than they did seeing Democrats refuse to stand for a 13-year-old boy who's suffering from cancer who was made a Secret Service agent. That's what the juxtaposition is right now. That's what the American people are seeing. And they're looking at it and they're going, these people are out of their minds.
Go
ahead.
Well, you know what I think also the New Yorkers are seeing is a Jewish student by the name of Grant Minor, who was the president of the United Auto Workers local on Columbia's campus that was just fired by Columbia administration for participating in those same protests. These are students that deserve their rights to be respected. These are ones that deserve to be recognized by those of us who aspire to be leaders across the city.
I got to leave it there.
I'm being so for real when I say this. I don't think a single Democratic voter or a single voter in New York in the mayoral race gives a shred of a fuck about whether or not congressional Democrats stood up and clapped for the 13-year-old cancer kid, okay? If you think that that is like what's going to win you favors in the New York mayoral race, like, you are the most delusional person on the planet. I mean, this guy's got no motion anyway. A little bit, like, it's so funny to be like, why don't they care about this kid? It's like, dude, what are you talking about? Yet another circumstance where it's like, if you ask the average person, if they're like podcast brain, maybe they fucking heard about it. But like, honestly, I don't think most normal people give a shit. Like, they have no idea what happened there. Okay. Jesus. All right. Anyway, here's another great moment from Zoran.
How many more New Yorkers will you do? You believe in the First Amendment? Do you believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan?
When all we had to answer for that cruelty was a smirk.
Because there is no answer for taking a man from his pregnant wife, who is due to deliver their newborn child in a month, from their Columbia University apartment, a day after that same man, Mahmoud Khalil, wrote to Columbia University and said he feared for his life. The cowardice that is on display across our city and our state is unacceptable. New Yorkers are looking to us. They are looking to their leaders for courage and for conviction. And what they are finding instead is collaboration. And that is just simply unacceptable.
How many more New Yorkers? How many more New Yorkers?
Why are we not seeing more Dems like this? I mean, you can't sit on your ass and collect checks if you do stuff like this. It's hard. You know, it's hard to do that. Democrats just don't really care about this stuff because why would they? Andrew Cuomo versus Zoran is a great analog for why Democrats don't do stuff like this, right? They don't do stuff like this because they're Andrew Cuomo. Why would they do that when they could just like call up the union leaders that and call in a favor from a sympathetic union leader to just like put together a silly ass union rank and filers for Cuomo campaign? Stop. And then that gets a lot of hits on Politico. Better question. Why should we risk losing a leader like this to the machine of the Democrats? I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know. Like, obviously, he's the one who's making this decision to put a D next to his name. I'm not going to sit around and be like, why are you associating yourself with the Democratic Party? The reason why is because, especially if you don't have name recognition, because Zoran doesn't have any name recognition, you have to use the well-established Democrat name in a well-established Democrat enclave like New York City. That's probably the reason why, you know? I'm sure people have other opinions on the matter, but it is what it is. There's a reason why the Working Families Party, which is a relatively strong party in New York state politics, still collaborates and operates within the confines of the Democratic Party. I don't care what gets him across the finish line, as long as he gets across the finish line. Does that make sense? That's the play here. But yeah, have you thought about interviewing him? Yes, I'm working on setting something up. Don't worry. But as you guys asked me, like, who's doing a good job of like putting up a strong fight, simultaneously galvanizing voters and making it issue specific? Zoran is doing a great job on that front. Now let's get back to the state of affairs at the national level. Donald Trump.
Releasing that because many presidents have gone through it and they haven't released. And I said, release. We even released Social Security numbers. I didn't want anything deleted. They said, sir, what about Social Security? People long gone, but they're long gone, so I can't imagine. But I said, if you don't delete it, if you do delete it, we have people are going to say, why did you delete it? There's something in there. So we gave Social Security, we gave everything. And the rest is for you to look at, Peter. You're going to see whether or not you see anything. But we've given it. We're doing it with Dr. Martin Luther King, too. They're preparing all of that. They're going to release everything. And
that's crazy. Okay, that's wild. Wait, what do you mean? So he's going to release the files on MLK's assassination? Ain't no way, dude. Ain't no way are they going to release the full files. There's no shot. I guess maybe because he hates the FBI, right? Maybe he's like, yeah, that's right. I hate the FBI. They came after me just like MLK. They killed him just like they tried to kill me.
whoever else they want. I mean, you know, we have nothing. We really have nothing to hide. We should.
It is amazing how much play podcasters get. Like, it is we are living in the podcast world, dude. This is the podcasters universe. We are just simply living in the podcasters universe.
Shouldn't have, you know, when a lot of time goes by. But with the Kennedy files in particular, they were going crazy on them. I don't think there's anything that's earth-shattering, but you'll have to make that determination. In those, you know, it's 80,000. It's actually 88,000, and we have some additional things, as you know, come out today. And for that, you can go to the offices and you can see whatever you want to see. Everything is out there, totally open. The additional stuff is available later on today. You go over to the offices and you can have it immediately, and you'll make a determination.
And on something else, these Tren de Aragua guys, because of your executive order, they are designated as foreign terrorists.
Yeah.
If ISIS or Al-Qaeda foreign terrorists were operating here in the United States, cops would probably be shooting first and asking questions later. And so what is the difference between terrorists, between somebody like an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda operative versus a MS-13 or Tren de Aragua?
Well, these are people that focus on destroying people in their homes. They're not as international in that sense. They're a group of thugs. They come from Venezuela.
Why don't we shoot first and ask questions later about people that we suspect as being Tren de Aragua terrorists? I don't know. Maybe because half of the people that you're locking up have no association with Tren de Aragua whatsoever, and it would be absolutely psychotic to just gun random people that you suspect of being Venezuelan down in the streets. What the fuck is this question? This guy, douchey. It's douchey, right? I think it is douchey. It sounded a lot like him. I like that douchey's question is basically, hey, why don't you start gunning down random people that you suspect of being brown, okay? Why don't we just start gunning down random brown people? Nice, dude. Thanks.
They come from the prisons of Venezuela. They're very dangerous people, but they didn't look so dangerous when the guards took care of the situation from El Salvador. And I want to thank the president. He's a friend of mine. He's done a great job. But I just can't imagine that the Democrats are taking this issue where they want to have them back. You know, so now they have men playing in women's sports. They have transgender for everyone. They have open borders. They have all of their crazy policies that are, I think, 95-5, not 90-10, okay? And their new policy is, let's bring Tren de Aragua back into our country. Let's bring the worst. These are the worst gang members there are. They looked amazingly frail, though. By the way they were handled. It's very amazing. You know, they weren't, when they were in Colorado cutting the fingers off a man because he made a phone call to the police, they seemed a lot tougher then than they did when they were having their head shaved and they were in shackles. They're tough people. They're bad people. We don't want them in our country. We can't let a judge say that he wants him. You know, he didn't run for president. He didn't get much more than 80 million votes. And we just can't let that happen. It'd be so bad for our country. I won on the basis of getting criminals out of our country that were let in. It was called unforced error. They were let in by Biden, incompetently let in, and let in by the millions, actually. 21 million people. I believe it's 21 million. And that's not even including the gotaways. But these are rough people. We want them out of our country. And I won the election based at least partly on that. And that's a big part, yeah?
And I don't know if you saw this. Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, I think I could kick most of their ass.
Oh, boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser. You know, I mean, the guy's a loser. He lost an election. He played a part. You know, usually a vice president doesn't play a part, they say. I think Tim played a part. I think he was so...
Yeah, he did. The part he played was being back-pocketed into oblivion. If Tim Walz had been unleashed, I think the chances of the Kamala Walz ticket would be significantly better. Okay? Straight up. I will stand on that. You might not agree with everything that Tim Walz did on the campaign, and I think personally that there were a lot of mistakes, especially mistakes in terms of like not letting him communicate in the ways that he wanted to. Some of that we actually heard about, like the whole weird thing. Right? They stopped him from doing that, which was stupid. But there's also other issues. I think if left to his own devices, he would have done a significantly better job talking about immigration, but he couldn't, step out of line with the top of the ticket on that front or with the Democratic Party. He couldn't, I don't know what his genuine perspective would have been in terms of the Israel stuff, but judging by his actions in Congress, when he was a member of Congress, like he was anti-war. He was one of the he was one of the select few openly anti-war Democrats, like one of the last bastion of like the anti-war Democrats out there. I don't think he loves Israel as much as people claim he does. He was just very clearly forced into that position. Maybe it's copium. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Walz was an Israel fanatic. First of all, if you judge Democrats off of, bruh, stop coping, I need everyone to understand something. Okay. I am speculating here because I know more than you do about his fucking track record. And the reason why I'm speculating in this direction is because you don't know his track record in Congress. You don't know that at all. I'm analyzing what he has done in terms of like when he had legislative power. Okay? Yes, he absolutely did come across as the bog standard pro-Israel Dem when he was running for VP. He also basically went back on a lot of his own personal policies in Minnesota and his own policy prescriptions when he was a congressperson in the Democratic Party when he was running alongside Kamala Harris. I know. And you could easily say he should have demonstrated courage as the vice president. I agree. It probably would have even salvaged the reputation of the ticket if he actually did step out of line. If there was a little bit of controversy surrounding Tim Walz and Kamala Harris not actually on board with the same agenda or whatever. He didn't do that. He probably should have. That would have genuinely been helpful for the Democrats, whether they recognize it or not. But he wanted to be a team player. He wanted to be Biden was the strongest candidate we had. Yeah, we should have ran Uncle Brandon again. You're right. He is. He's the strongest. These guys are truly terrified of broaching the issue of Israel. Like the way I know that, like I know no matter how progressive they are, unless you're like a Rashida Tlaib or an Ilhan Omar, okay, most Democrats shit in their diapers when the issue of Israel comes up. Okay, even progressive Democrats like Bernie Sanders and even progressive Democrats like AOC, you would think that the entire Democratic caucus has like, blackmail on them or something, the way that they operate. Okay, I know. I see it. I see it every day. It is absurd. It's not, there is no issue, I think, within the Democratic Party that is so directly at odds with the base's demands than Israel. Like the Democratic Party is overwhelmingly, at this point, the Democratic Party's base of support overwhelmingly says Israel's gone way too far, okay? It ranges from two-staters to the person that does not know what the fuck Israel even is, but just hears about it in the news and goes, I don't like all the baby murder I've seen that my children keep harassing me about. Okay? And yet, in spite of all of that, in spite of the genuine momentum shift on this key issue, Democrats are terrified of stepping out of line. It doesn't make any sense. It's very stupid. You're libbing out a little? How is this libbing out? I'm saying that the Democratic Party across the board is directly at odds with its base, okay, on this issue, on many issues, but specifically with Israel. It's like such an obvious gimme. It's such an obvious, easy-ass point of contention that they could stress to expose the hypocrisy of the Trump administration in terms of claiming that they're fucking free speech, pro-free speech, but then simultaneously undermining that, claiming that they want law and order while routinely violating laws and creating disorder because you have hurt the feelings of Israel. Like, this is a foreign country. What are you talking about? There are so many ways that you could communicate to the broader public, reach across the aisle even, something that Democrats love doing. It is the easiest gimme of all time. And yet Democrats are asleep at the wheel or shitting in their diapers, basically. They just don't want to fight this fight at all. And it's very frustrating. Even purely on electoral strategy grounds, it makes no sense that they are so uncomfortable on this issue. They're so scared about just saying enough is enough.
That he hurt her, but she hurt herself, and Joe hurt them both. They didn't have a great group, but I would probably put him at the bottom of the group
Have you heard that Biden
Mr.
wants to get
President.
back involved for
Mr.
Democratic
President.
politicians, fundraising and campaigning against your policies? What do
I
you think
hope
of
so.
that?
I hope so.
Mr. President, there are several
The US
families, Mr.
planning
President, there
to
are families
position
from some of the
Who are you
people.
with?
I'm with La Nación newspaper from Argentina. There are families from some of the people that were on those flights to El Salvador that claim that they're not criminals, they're not members of Agua, of MS-13. What can you tell them and what guarantees can you give them that everyone in those planes were actual criminals, terrorists, as you said?
Well, I was told that they went through a very strong vetting process.
Did they?
And that that
And it
will also
failed.
be continuing in El Salvador. And if there's anything like that, we would certainly want to find out. But these were a bad group. This was a bad group, and they were in bad areas, and they were with a lot of other people that were absolutely killers, murderers, and people that were really bad with the worst records you've ever seen. And but we will continue that process, absolutely. We don't want to make that kind of a mistake.
Is the U.S. planning to give up the position of NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, and if so, why?
NATO is something that I saved. NATO was gone until I came along. In fact, the previous Secretary General, very good man, both of them are good. The current man is fantastic. But both of them have said, if it wasn't for Trump, you wouldn't even have a NATO, because we were paying the cost of almost all of the countries. And now they're paying. I said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to continue. You heard us on trade. You do bad things on trade. And then on top of it, we're supposed to pay for your military. And because of what I did, hundreds of billions of dollars flowed into NATO by countries that just weren't paying. They were delinquent. They weren't paying their bills. So NATO is solid. They're strong. But they have to treat us fairly. Because, look, without us, NATO is not the
And we're
same
giving-
thing. And I can tell you, I've been having very good discussions, as you know, with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And President Putin will tell you that without the United States, he wouldn't be worried. But he is worried when the United States is involved. And I have to tell you, I've dealt very well with both gentlemen, and we have, I think we have the confines of a deal. I hope we have the confines of a deal. I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, and by far most importantly, thousands of young people, and they're not American people, they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, are being killed every week, thousands a week. And also the United States has paid, because of Biden, $350 billion on a war that should have never happened. If we had a competent president in this, sitting right here, that war would have never happened. It would have absolutely never happened with me. And it didn't happen. For 4 years, it didn't happen.
Mr. President, do you think you have the authority, the power to round up people, deport them, and then you're under no obligation to a court to show the evidence against them?
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs.
No, it doesn't.
Because we were, unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. So you ought to ask, did he have the authority to allow millions of people? Did Biden have the authority to do something that's unthinkable? Have open borders where millions of people poured into our country, totally unvetted and totally unchecked, just as you would say. And many of those people were criminals. Many of them were from jails and prisons and mental institutions and gang members and drug dealers and very dangerous people. Many were murderers. We have 11,088 that we know of murderers they murdered. Of that number, at least half killed more than one person. They're in our country. They're in a location near you. Biden.
Okay, dude. Just what is the purpose of having these sorts of press conferences if you know you just get to say whatever you want to say? No one is gonna be able to course correct here. He's just straight up lying. Like the questions that came before this basically undermined this position that he's trying to keep repeating. Hey, why do you keep saying they're like all murderers when, you know, it's clear that a lot of these guys are not even criminals at all? They have no criminal records. Something that the Department of Homeland Security has also admitted in their briefings. Why do you keep saying that? And he's like, oh, they're vetted. They're vetted so well by the DHS. It's like, okay, but the DHS's own vetting process shows that there's very little evidence. And if they had done the perfect vetting, then they'd have a strong case for deportation in the court system. If they had clear evidence, hard, tangible evidence on terrorism grounds, then you could take it to a judge and the judge would sign off on it. The entire point of this conversation is that you don't want to go to the judge because you know you don't have any evidence. And the DHS is openly stating that they don't have enough evidence to deport these people. And a lot of dummies will come into this chat and still say, well, coming here illegally is a crime. Yes, dumbass, I know. So is fucking jaywalking, okay? Shut up. You don't understand what you're saying. There are crimes that warrant deportation. Trump knows this. You don't. That's the reason why he lies about the severity of the crimes. Do you not understand that? The problem is these people did not come in here illegally. Many of these people actually came here legally. They came here because Trump invited them. First, Trump ruined their economy deliberately and then invited them here and gave them temporary protected status, proper documentation to work inside of U.S. borders. You are too stupid to understand any of this stuff. So you just go, coming here illegally is a crime. Y'all crazy? I'm getting death threats with this. Stop fucking crying, okay? Shut up. Shut up. You're imagining death threats that you're getting right now. Shut up. I hate this shit. Conservatives come in here and they're like, sorry, sucks to suck. People that actually have the proper documentation, that have had that documentation removed from them like that, who are getting deported to a fucking slave camp, deserve to be sent to a slave camp. Doesn't matter. No due process. Don't give a shit. And then you immediately go, oh, people are being mean to me. Shut up. God, I can't fucking stand the soy right, dude. Holy fuck. Bunch of pathetic crybabies. Oh my Lord, dude. Unfucking bearable. Constantly advocating for more death and more destruction, more harm to others that have less than them, and then immediately going, oh, you're being mean to me. You're being so mean. What did I do other than advocate for an insane process of just like randomly grabbing people off the fucking street that previously had the proper documentation and then shipping them off to an unaccountable, serial human rights violating slave labor colony? What happened to civility? I was just simply being a fucking Nazi. Why can't I just advocate for a little bit of fascism without even recognizing that that will inevitably hurt you, huh?
Allowed that to happen to our country, and his people that really ran the country. And the person that operated the auto pen, I think we ought to find out who that was, because I guess that was the real president. So when you ask me if we have the authority, did Biden have the authority to allow millions of people to come into our country? Many of these people hardened criminals at the top of the line who have caused tremendous damage in our country. You see them in New York City fighting with our police. I mean, literally having fist fights in the street with our police. These are tough, hard criminals. Many of them came out of jails, and not just South America, from all over the world. They came out from Africa, from the Congo. They came out from Asia, not just South America, but many from South America. These are hard, tough criminals, and we have to get them out. And a judge sitting behind a bench someplace got a nice appointment. You can't take that away from the people that are responsible. Now, in this case, Marco Rubio has a lot of big decisions to make, and he's a fantastic person, a great man. I think he'll be our best. I think he has a chance to be our best Secretary of State. He's been doing incredibly. He works so hard. He's gone to so many different countries already, and he's got the authority to get bad people out of our country. And you can't stop that with a judge sitting behind a bench that has no idea what goes on, who happens to be a radical left lunatic.
That Elon Musk was going to be shown a 20 to 30 page presentation about a theoretical war plan against China. Why not just show it to Elon?
Because I don't want to show it to anybody. You know, you're talking about a potential war with China. Now, I deal with these people all the time, and I'm dealing with Pete. I'm dealing with these gentlemen on numerous different airplane purchases, and I think they're all going to be great. But I don't want other people anybody seeing potential war with China. We don't want to have a potential war with China, but I can tell you if we did, we're very well equipped to handle it. But I don't want to show that to anybody. But certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price for helping us cut costs, and he's doing a great job. He's finding tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. but I certainly wouldn't want, Elon has businesses in China, and he would be susceptible perhaps to that. But it was such a fake story. The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. And anybody read that story, people...
Yeah, it's a fake story, but also Elon Musk would like to prosecute the leakers. That's what you do with fake stories. The New York Times is pure propaganda. Also, I look forward to the prosecutions of those at the Pentagon who are leaking maliciously false information to the New York Times. They will be found. It's simultaneously a fake story and also, why did you release this information? We're going to prosecute you. Yeah, I can't believe they're leaking false information. The fake news is at it again. This time, the failing New York Times, they said incorrectly that Elon Musk is going to the Pentagon tomorrow to be briefed on a potential war with China. How ridiculous. China will not even be mentioned or discussed. How disgraceful it is that the discredited media can make up such lies. Anyway, the story is completely untrue. I wish it was, though, honestly, because as I described yesterday, it's a win-win regardless, because either A, Elon Musk is a secret Chinese asset given his, factories in Shanghai and will leak the war plans to China immediately, or Elon Musk is not a Chinese asset, but simply an incompetent billionaire who will accidentally leak that information in an effort to like flex on Twitter for some of his dumbest followers, and will undermine those plans regardless. The moment that you got Elon Musk looking into it, I mean, we saw what he did with Doge, right? Like, can't wait for that level of competence to be a formative fixture at America's next chapter of Cold War against China.
Laughed at that story. Who would do such a thing?
Yeah, remember when Doge leaked a black site on U.S. soil? That was fun.
First thing I did is I called Susie and I called Pete. I said, is there any truth to that? And they said, it's ridiculous. No, he's over there to talk about costs. You might want to address that, Pete. But Elon was over there today to address costs. Doge, thing called Doge, which you've heard about. Pete?
That's exactly right, Mr. President. You point.
It's so funny that like annoying autistic kids or adults that want clout online is probably one of the most consistent ways that the Pentagon ends up leaking classified information on Discord servers. And then you basically have the leading annoying, narcissistic, thin-skinned, autistic man who wants fucking clout online to be in a meeting like this. Like, you literally looked at the War Thunder forums, you looked at that other Discord leaker guy, and you said, let's get the current version of that into one of the most important meetings that we could have about our most significant foreign adversary. Hilarious. Awesome.
Pointed out it was a fake story. We pointed out it was meant to sort of undermine whatever relationship the Pentagon has with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a patriot. Elon Musk is an innovator. Elon Musk provides a lot of capabilities our government and our military rely on, and I'm grateful for that. We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about Doge, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. The rest of that reporting was fake. There was no war plans. There was no Chinese war plans. There was no secret plans. That's not what we were doing at the Pentagon.
I might add that I think Elon, if they ever wanted to do that, I think Elon wouldn't do it. I think he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't want to put himself in that position.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It's so good. Oh, dude. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, Elon cares about America. Oh, my God. That's an amazing take. First of all, no billionaire cares about anything but putting another zero next to their net worth, okay? I mean, Trump, if you consider him to be a real billionaire, is a perfect example of this. That is amazing. That is amazing. Ay, ay, ay.
But if you read what's out of the New York Times, it's such a dishonest newspaper. It's such garbage. It's, it used to be called all the news that's fit to print. Well, it's all the news that's not fit to print. They have fake sources, or they don't have sources. I think they make most of it up. But this was a made-up story by the New York Times. I call it the failing. It's a failing newspaper. It's failing. And they shouldn't do that. They really are the enemy of the people. We do need honest journalism in this. We've made such big strides over the last 2 months. but we just need honest journalism, and we don't have it. When you have a CNN, you have to watch these people every once in a while just to see where they're coming from, and it's so dishonest. MSNBC is, I think, probably worse, and they're both doing horribly in the ratings. I think they're going to be turned off. I don't think, they're not doing any ratings. You're doing well in the ratings.
Thank you. Is there anything that they can do to stop April 2nd or to roll back the tariffs that you put on China already?
Well, we can talk, but basically, I call April 2nd. I would have made it April 1st, but I didn't want to be April Fool's Day because then nobody would believe what I said, and they do believe me. April 2nd is going to be Liberation Day for America. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, friend and foe. We've been ripped off on trade. We've been ripped off on military. We protect people, and they don't do anything for us. It's just so unfair for years and years. And now some of that money is going to be coming back to us in the form of tariffs. Tens of billions. It's going to be numbers like nobody's ever seen. So NVIDIA announced today, you saw that, hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. The biggest chip maker in the world announced hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. Hundreds of billions, not millions, but billions. They're all coming here. Apple just announced $500 billion worth. They're going to build plants here. You know, they built their plants in China. They're going to build them here. And they're starting immediately. We have investment, the likes of which this country has never seen, already announced. And they all want to have news conferences. I don't have enough time to have that many news conferences, but I would say so far at least $4 trillion. $4 trillion is coming in.
Dude, lying is so undefeated. It is crazy. Has anyone ever thought about just simply lying? Like a lot. Just over and over again. And then having an entire media apparatus, both on the mainstream side with Fox News and on the independent media side with every podcast, just go along with it as though it is the case. And it's not like I can't be, maybe I care about this too much, like from the optics side or the narrative side, because I'm a commentator and that's basically all I do. But I am truly in awe of how successful simply fucking lying is. And even if it never happens, and many of the things that they say they're doing are not real, and many of the things that they say is coming is not coming at all, it just does not matter. Like, people just move on to the next lie. It is the Elon Musk method in many ways as well. Every time you do a new product announcement, just straight up lie. Stock prices won't actually get hurt by it, even if you never follow through on them. We're not in Mars. There's no Tesla Roadster. There's no battery swap initiatives. And, you know, look how far Elon was able to get with that. He was able to basically snowball his falsehoods into still, no FSD, no brain chips, just lie over and over again. The only reason why Elon is falling out of favor now is because of his like direct association with Donald Trump and the fact that he's the guy that they're using as a hatchet to gut the administrative state. If that wasn't the case, people probably still would think like, oh, he's the woke guy, right? Tesla, I don't know.
Car companies, very importantly, a lot of the car companies that were going to build in Mexico or Canada are now building here because I don't want cars from.
This chatter says, where is it? There was a chatter who said, what? Oh, you can take it now, yeah. Okay, they're back again. Come in. Oh my God. So there was a chatter who said, is there a tell? Because like when someone lies this much, I'm sure there's a tell. What is Trump's tell? There is no tell. You want to know why there is no tell? Because he lies with every statement. So if everything that you say is a lie, there's no reason for a tell. His tell is just he opens his mouth. Every single thing he says is a lie. So there's no reason to try and figure out what a tell is for Donald Trump because his mouth is open. That's the tell.
Canada. I don't want cars from Mexico. They want to do it, it's fine, but I want the car companies to build here, not, they were building in Mexico. 3 plants, big plants, really big plants, and they were going to sell the cars right across the border. We wouldn't have the jobs, we wouldn't have the profits, we wouldn't get the taxes, we get nothing. All we get is unemployment and empty factories. Those days are over. So now those 3
Apologies to your American viewers for further killing any hopes of free healthcare. We flew 2 prototypes in December, and it clearly terrified your military.
places are going to build here, but many more than that. We have a big one. Honda is building, just announced a really big plant in Indiana, great state, smart place to build. And we have many car companies coming here. The steel mills are going to be booming, And many other things, many other things come with that. But we need that for defense. There are certain things you have to have. You have to have steel. We would have had, if I didn't do in my first term tariffs to stop the onslaught, because they were dumping steel in order to destroy our steel plants. If I didn't do 50% and even 100% in certain cases tariffs on steel, you wouldn't have a steel plant in the United States. And Biden was unable to get rid of those tariffs because they threw off so much money that his numbers, which didn't work anyway, because his numbers were terrible, what he did, the way he spent money was so horrible, and what he allowed to happen to energy. That's the other thing. Energy is going to be like it's never been before. Mr. Vice President is here. Do you have anything to say while you're here? He's a very good Vice President.
I'm just here to watch the show, sir.
Okay.
I think airplanes are pretty cool, so I wanted to check this out.
Cool. It is cool. Well, I'll be speaking to President Xi. I have a great relationship with him. We're going to have a very good relationship. But we have a $1 trillion deficit because of Biden with President Xi. More than that. I mean, I've heard $1.2 trillion. We have a deficit. And I've explained that to President Xi. We also have a problem where he's allowing fentanyl to be sent into Mexico and then cross the border and, killing. I think the number is much higher than the 125, 115 that I think it's closer to 300,000 people a year. And so that's a problem. But they have a tremendous surplus against the United States, so we don't want that.
Is that come to you asking for exemptions on tariffs? Is that something that is under consideration by you?
Well, people are coming to me and talking about tariffs, and a lot of people are asking me if they could have exceptions. And once you do that for one, you have to do that for all. So, I mean, generally, I did something interestingly during 2 weeks ago. I gave the American car companies a break, because it would have been unfair if I didn't. And everybody said, oh, he changed his mind on tariffs. I didn't change my mind. I helped our, sort of big 3, big 4. I helped some of the American companies. And instead of taking it properly, they said, oh, he changed it. I don't change. But the word flexibility is an important word. Sometimes there's flexibility. So there'll be flexibility. But basic
Art of the deal. I changed my mind. I didn't change it at all. There's many tariffs coming, but also some of the tariffs are gone. There's no more tariffs. We've destroyed the tariffs. Tariffs are the greatest word in the English language. I love the word tariff. I'm doing tariffs. Tariffs have gotten 10% higher. Tariffs have gotten 10% lower. This is how it is.
It's reciprocal, so that if China's charging us 50% or 30% or 20%, and I don't mean China, I mean anybody, any country, Canada. Nobody knows that Canada's charging our dairy farmers. They have 270% tariffs. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. They have up to 400%. They have a couple of tariffs at 400%. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada. And yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that. Because we can't be expected to carry a country that is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state. It would be a cherished state. The taxes for Canadian citizens would go down in less than half. They don't spend money on military because they think we're going to protect them. There are many things that they do, like icebreakers. They want us to provide icebreakers for them. Oh, that's wonderful. So the Canada, they're very tough traders too. I want to just tell you, of all the people, they're tough traders. They trade very tough. And, the expression I use is, some people don't have the cards. I used that expression about a week and a half ago, right? Somebody was negotiating.
Yeah, he loves his little expressions.
Who didn't have the cards, who's now, I think, saying that He wants to do it, and I think we're going to have a big deal on that very special something. We got to make a deal on that. But Canada has been a very nasty negotiator against the United States, took advantage of the United States for a long time. But nobody knows that they were getting 270% tariffs on dairy products.
Mr. President, and I don't think I've heard you say this in all of the talk about Canada becoming the 51st state. Are you concerned that if they became the 51st state, they would be a very, very blue state? Very, very big and very, very blue.
No, there might be, but it would, you know, you have that artificial line that goes, that straight artificial, that looked like it was drawn by a ruler. Somebody with a, I don't mean a ruler like a king, I mean like a ruler, this way. And it's just an artificial line that was drawn in the sand or in the ice. And you know, and can I tell you, Peter, just you add that to this country, what a beautiful landmass, the most beautiful landmass anywhere in the world. And it was just cut off for whatever reason. It would be great. Now, is it liberal? Maybe. But, you know, a conservative, until I got involved, because I don't care who wins up there. I frankly probably would do better with the liberal than the conservative, if you want to know the truth. But just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about, probably it's to our advantage, actually. But the conservative was leading against, I call him Governor Trudeau. The conservative was leading by 35 points. So, you know, so I don't know about that. I think Canada is a place like a lot of other places. If you have a good candidate, the candidate's going to win.
And I know the two astronauts that you just helped save from space, they didn't get any overtime pay for all that extra time. They got $5 a day per diem. For 286 days, that is $1,430 in extra pay. Is there anything the administration can do to get them, to make them whole?
Well, nobody's ever mentioned this to me. If I have to, I'll pay it out of my own pocket, okay? I'll get it for them. I'll take care of that. I like that. I think that's, I'll pay it right out of my, is that all? That's not a lot for what they had to go through. And I want to thank Elon Musk, by the way, because think if we don't have him. You know, there's only so long, even though they're in the capsule up there, that the body starts to deteriorate after 9 or 10 months and gets really bad after 14, 15 months with the bones and the blood and all the things that you've been reporting on very well. And if we don't have Elon, they could be up there a long time. Who else is
they would have perished. They would have just deteriorated.
Going to get him? And I just want to thank him. He's going through a lot, what they're doing to him. And these people are going to be caught, and they're going to be caught, and they're going to be prosecuted. And from what they tell me, I see this just by watching your programs and reading the news, but from what they tell me, they could get 20 years in jail, and they'll get it. I'll tell you, there's going to be no leniency, and there'll be no pardons. I can tell you that right now.
And you said this morning 20 years in jail, and then maybe you said this morning 20 years in jail, and then maybe they'll go to one of these prisons in El Salvador. Do you think with the way that the judges have been issuing injunctions, it would be easier or harder to send these Tesla domestic terrorists to a jail in El Salvador?
Guys, they want to send American citizens to a slave labor camp in El Salvador for vandalism. I can't explain to you how insane this is. If you can't recognize how psychotic this statement is, like the very fact that we are entertaining it, based, dude, an administration that will remove due process and decide that you are a terrorist for vandalism will inevitably lock your stupid ass up too. I don't know how you don't recognize this. I was joking. Okay. No jokes. I thought we had another Asman Gold in the chat, another Asman Gold follower in the chat going, yeah, based. You should have realized it's a joke, Lamafao. Do you know how many people I encounter on a daily basis that unironically says, yeah, based? Oftentimes they're also saying, like, you know, we should gun Hassan down in the streets, but you're sounding like Hitler, straight up saying the Nazism out loud. Are you talking about Donald Trump? Because yes. Wait, you're sounding like Hitler, no joking aloud. That's what sounds like Hitler, not Trump saying we don't care about due process. If we consider you a terrorist, American citizen or not, we're going to deport you to a concentration labor camp. I feel like out of these two things, like there's one guy who definitely sounds a lot more like Hitler
than these MS-13 or Tren de Aragua guys.
Well, I view these people as terrorists just like others. When I looked at those showrooms burning and those cars, not one or two, like 7, 8, 10 burning, exploding all over the place. These are terrorists. You didn't have that on January 6th, I can tell you. You didn't have anything like that on January 6th, which is sort of amazing because on January 6th, the Democrats were talking. Nobody was killed other than a very beautiful young woman, Ashley Babbitt. Nobody was killed. And you look at what's going on now.
Nobody was killed. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Bro's still talking about January 6th. That's one of my favorite Trump lines. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. He did it again. January 6th. Nobody was killed. Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Now with these terrorists. These are terrorists, and that's an organized event. You know, take a look at their signs. Take a look.
Yeah. January 6th, not an act of terror. Very cool, very fun. Nobody was killed. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Drop penis on a Tesla. I can't even say it. Biggest act of terror so far anyone's ever seen. What is this? So you don't sympathize with people like Lake and Riley? What? Sympathize with people like Lake and Riley? What are you saying, my man? Alan Dulles was also involved in Operation Sunrise in World War II, where he might have tried to make a separate deal with the Nazis. Okay, I don't know what this guy is on about. I'm so confused. Like, you can't know about Alan Dulles and then turn around and also be pro-Trump's immigration agenda.
They're all made by the same sign company. A nice, expensive job. Now, these are the people that finance it are, in my opinion, in just as big a trouble as the people that are setting the match and setting the fires. So we'll see. It's under very serious investigation by the FBI and by the Justice Department. These people are terrorists. Okay.
And their thoughts are immediately going to the safety of their loved ones who are currently deployed.
Well, we're making our country strong. And when they see a thing like that and they hear that story about Elon and
like, I'm not even Mr. like January 6ers were terrorists, right? But under Trump's definition, if you think like farting on a Tesla is an act of terror, then what is January 6th then? Like, this is what is so, because like, if you consider farting on a Tesla to be an act of terror, okay, then I'm sorry, January 6th is basically 11 9/11s worth of terrorism, okay? If the standard for terrorism now is like drawing a dick on a Tesla or putting a bag of dog poop on a Tesla, vandalizing a Tesla, then January 6th is like 1 million 9/11s. 9/11 itself is 10 million 9/11s. We have raised the standard. That's crazy.
China, what they should do is realize that the New York Times is a corrupt institution, because I think they're the ones. They knew that story wasn't true. Nobody believed that story. People that, when I first called, they laughed when they heard the story. Nobody believed it. That the Pentagon was giving him a briefing on what war with China would look like, and he has business. No, they made that up because it's a good story to make up. They're very dishonest people. Look, I have it with the Times, and you'll see more and more of it. To me, it's a very dishonest organization. But a story like that is made up. It's total fiction. And I just wanted to make sure. I called up Chief of Staff and I called up Pete and I said, is there any truth to that? Absolutely not. He's there for Doge, not there for China. And if you ever mention China, I think he'd walk out of the room. He wouldn't take it anyway. So it's just a made up story. Nobody's taken better care of the military. One of the things that I know that Pete's doing is he's talking about a lot of the civilian staff, and we're going to get them other jobs. You know, we're going to have a lot of jobs in this country, but we don't want to have wasteful jobs. We want to have meaningful jobs. And those were wasteful jobs. Those are jobs that not only military, but jobs where people don't show up. You take a look at Department of Education. I've never seen so many buildings with the names on it. You go past one after another Department of Education, and they're empty. The people don't show up. You know why? Because they have other jobs, because they're playing golf, or they're playing something, they're doing something. And we have a lot of great people, but we have to move that back to the States. We're going to make our country strong, and we're going to get people much better jobs, because we have companies moving into our country, the likes of which we've never seen before. Nothing like this has happened. And it's automatic. They don't want to pay the tariffs. How do you avoid paying the tariffs? You build your plant in the United States, and it's a beautiful thing to see. I see it. So far, I would say $4 trillion. Nobody's ever heard of them. No country's ever heard of numbers like that. $4 trillion, and those are the best ones. The biggest, best chip maker in the world. I'm not a fan of the Chip Act, where you give billions of dollars away to companies that don't need it, and it won't bring them here. I'm giving nothing away. All they're doing is coming here. They're building because they want to avoid. Remember this on the tariffs, too, because that's going to be, Liberation Day, April 2nd. It's reciprocal. If they charge us, we charge them. So somebody say, well, how much are the tariffs? Very fair. If India, as an example, has been very bad to us on tariffs, they charge 100%, 200%, whatever they charge.
Damn, talking shit about India after having a fantastic Modi glaze sesh is really messed up, in my opinion. Like, he's such a phony friend, dude. He talks behind your back.
Now, Europe just announced they're lowering the tariffs on cars. We charge like a joke, 2.5%. That's what this country charges. Europe just announced that they're reducing their tariffs on cars to 2.5%. It's nice. But they also have non-monetary tariffs where they make it impossible for the cars to get in even without the dollars on them and the dollar signs. It's called a non-monetary tariff, where they put on controls where no matter what happens, because they don't want cars, they don't want the American car in their market. And yet they send us millions of cars. They send us big agriculture. They don't want our agriculture. They don't want anything from us. European Union's very tough. But now it's fair. So whatever they do to us, we do to them.
Continues to attack Ukraine. Are you planning to impose any?
We have a ceasefire on a lot of areas, and so far that's all held very well. And getting that ceasefire, they had a lot of guns pointing at each other. You had some soldiers, unfortunately, surrounded by other soldiers. And they are going to be, I believe, we're going to pretty soon have a full ceasefire, and then we're going to have a contract. And the contract's being negotiated, the contract in terms of dividing up the lands, et cetera, it's being negotiated as we speak.
What do you say to critics who say that your actions towards law firms amount to coercion?
Well, the law firms all want to make deals. You mean the law firms that we're going after, that went after me for 4 years, ruthlessly, violently, illegally? You mean, are those the law firms you're talking about? They're not babies. They're very sophisticated people. Those law firms did bad things. They went after me for years. Russia hoax. All a hoax. It was a hoax. It was Hunter Biden's laptop. It didn't come out of Russia, by the way. It was came out of his bedroom. It was all a hoax. Developed by Democrats. Hillary, I don't think Biden did, because I don't think Biden knows what the hell he's doing, frankly, based on everything I see. I've seen things since being here that are so sad, what he's done to this country, what he and they did to this country, those people that surrounded him, who, by the way, are radical left but smart. He's not smart. He was never smart. But these are radical left, smart people. They totally controlled him. He did whatever they told him to do. And it's a shame. It's so sad to see what happened, what they've done to this country, both not only the inflation you saw, but allowing millions and millions of criminals into our country. That's an inexcusable act. And many other things besides that. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
The latest now on Elon Musk's expanding role in the Trump administration. The New York Times reported yesterday that he was set to visit the Pentagon to get a briefing on Chinese war plans. That may have been reversed at this point, but he is still going to the Pentagon. I want to get all the details from Martha Raddatz, Chief Global Affairs Anchor. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. The New York Times had reported late last night that Elon Musk would be briefed at the Pentagon today on top secret plans for any potential war with China, which would be an extraordinary expansion.
I like that the only impactful news coverage on this is like low key, because Elon has significant financial ties to China. Like the only reason why they care about this is because like they want to hit Elon, right? They want to hurt Elon. They want to hurt the Trump administration. And what they've decided, the most impactful way to do that basically is to, tackle the issue from the perspective of Elon Musk is a Chinese asset, potentially, just like China baiting, red baiting. Nice.
expansion beyond the Doge responsibilities, given his business connections to China, and the fact that those are very closely held secrets. But overnight, a fury of denials from the Trump administration, the president claiming the story is completely untrue, and Elon Musk calling the story pure propaganda, saying leakers will be prosecuted. But what is true is that Elon Musk will be at the Pentagon today. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth denying the meeting will be about China war plans. Instead, Hegseth saying it will be an informal meeting about innovation and efficiencies. Although last night, an official did tell ABC News that China would at least be mentioned in this meeting, and the meeting would be with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It is unclear whether that is true anymore, Rebecca, but we do know Hegseth will be at the White House. Rebecca?
And we also know how important China is to Musk and his business Tesla, which had record sales there last year. All right, Martha, thank you.
A series of violent attacks on Tesla vehicles and property. Charges have been brought against 3 suspects. Our senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky is here with the details on that. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning to you, Lindsay. As Attorney General's comparing violence and vandalism aimed at Tesla to domestic terrorism, and this morning President Trump is warning anyone caught sabotaging a Tesla has a good chance of spending 20 years in prison. So far, 3 people do face arson and destruction charges for throwing Molotov cocktails at Tesla products in 3 states. Elon Musk says this is psycho, and he says he's ramping up security. There has been an uptick in threats since Musk began leading Trump's effort to drastically shrink the federal government. Trump showcased Tesla at the White House. Now his Commerce Secretary is urging Americans to buy.
I do think it's kind of wild that Americans can only advocate for or against political issues on the basis of commodities. Like we genuinely don't have any other. I mean, I get it. Like, commodities do rule our lives. Okay, commodity production, I would say, is the underlying, like, the relations that Americans have and all people have to how commodities are produced. Perhaps is responsible for the way that our entire society is organized. But it is wild that, like, every battle that is being fought on the basis of what kind of products you consume, and what kind of products you consume says about you. This is just vandalism, okay? What they're doing is vandalism. What people are doing is vandalism. That's what it is. Deciding that vandalism is now an act of terror, specifically against Tesla, by the way, is wild. It's just ridiculous. Saying that you're going to prosecute and imprison and potentially send American citizens on trumped up charges of terror to an El Salvador prison slave camp is, I don't know, it's just the most insane erosion of civil liberties. There's just no more normalcy at all. This is normal.
Tesla stock, which has lost nearly 40% of its value this year. And George, there's no let up by protesters. A group calling itself Tesla Takedown is aiming to demonstrate next week at Tesla showrooms all across the country, George.
Yeah, and real questions about whether it's appropriate for the Commerce Secretary to be telling Americans to buy Tesla stock. It appears to violate federal regulations. Thank you, Aaron.
The president signed an executive order aimed at shutting down the Department of Education, saying he hopes the current Secretary of Education will be the last one. But there are concerns about the impact. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, is tracking the latest. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Rebecca. Well, the president says that the Education Department is, quote, doing us no good and is taking action to essentially shut it down, signing an executive order surrounded by young students. But this morning, as you said, there are very real questions about what this all means for the nation's public school children.
He's not going to cut the Department of Education in its entirety. He is going to basically cut funding to some of the most underserved aspects that the Department of Education focuses on. He can't simply just like destroy the Department of Education top down with an executive order. But I guess what he can try and do is to cut direct funding initiatives to rural schools and inner city schools that do rely on Department of Education funding. And also, I guess, simultaneously allow schools to segregate even further, even though our schooling system is fairly segregated right now. It will give the opportunity. What are you doing? Are you gonna let her out? All right. Okay. This will give school systems the opportunity to directly segregate with no regulatory mechanism whatsoever. Oh, also the ones that get cooked in this process obviously are disabled students too, because like that's another part of this. It's another part of this process.
With the stroke of a pen, President Trump moving to eliminate the Department of Education.
My administration will take all lawful steps to shut down the department. We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible. It's doing us no good.
Shutting down the department requires congressional approval, but the president trying to do everything in his power to dismantle it. It's already the smallest cabinet-level agency, and nearly half of its staff has already been laid off. The president has repeatedly promised to return education to the states. States already administer curriculum for the nation's students, and most funding for public schools is provided by state and local governments. What the Education Department does oversee, enforcement of civil rights laws to prevent discrimination.
This is what I mean. Like, it's on average is around 15% of funding, which is still fairly significant considering how underfunded our schools are regardless. But a lot of the funding for schools usually come from local taxes, right? Property taxes and the like. This also creates a different class hierarchy in the way that the children of the working class get worse schooling overall because they're in neighborhoods where their schools are not adequately funded, whereas wealthy people get to live in wealthy districts, get to go and send their children to incredibly wealthy public schools. Having said that, while this exacerbates wealth disparity in and of itself, and is an area that needs desperate reform, at the federal level, the Department of Education is tasked with, yes, enforcement of civil rights and also additional funding for the underserved communities, rural communities that voted for Donald Trump, and inner cities that may have also voted for Donald Trump, but more likely voted for the Democrats.
Discrimination in schools, funding for low-income students and students with disabilities, and the process of students applying for college financial aid, a $1.6 trillion portfolio of student loans. The administration insists these services won't be interrupted, that they will be taken care of by other agencies, though they haven't said which ones. Across the country, many educators are apprehensive. John Arthur teaches 5th and 6th grade at Meadowlark Elementary in Salt Lake City, a school where many students are below the poverty line.
It's terrifying. The first thing that I want to acknowledge is the fact that nobody knows what's going to happen. And nobody knows what it would mean for sure if the Department of Education went away. But I do know that as a teacher in a Title I school, my students not only receive but rely on the funds that we get from the federal government.
But others, like Oklahoma State Superintendent Ryan Walters, think their students will ultimately benefit.
I think states are going to have more money than they've ever had with less strings because, again, when you eliminate the bureaucracy, you're eliminating those roles, you're able to give states more money.
Yeah, that's what their goal was, to give states more money for education. No, what they're going to end up doing is barely give any additional funds to the states and allow states to basically do previously de facto, now de jure segregation. Okay, legal segregation, greatly driving up the wealth disparity and the educational outcomes for the poor that want to get a decent education. It's already super cooked everywhere in this country. Education is dog shit in this country. Obviously, even Trump recognizes that. It's just crazy that his solution to it is to make the problem worse.
Now, again, only Congress can actually abolish the agency, and right now it's not clear if the president has the votes to do so.
He's handed the keys to Elon Musk and is selling this country for parts to the richest people on the planet for a kickback. And in exchange, they will bankroll his campaigns and those of his allies. They scratch his back, he scratches theirs, and the rest of us are left behind.
So today we are here to say very loudly and clearly, no, we will not accept an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires run the government.
Wasn't there a poll that showed that people without college education were more likely to vote towards conservatives? Yes, but besides that, virtually every group in this country, in terms of educational attainment, in terms of demographics, with one exception, is pro-Trump. White men with a college degree are +1 on Trump. White women with a college degree are -38 on Trump. Okay? That is the only group. White women with a college degree is the only group that is not so hot on Donald Trump right now. Outside of that, people without a college degree, very positive on Trump. Men and women. Even white men with a college degree are positive on Trump by a very slim margin, by 1 point in his favor.
No, we will not accept an authoritarian form.
I don't know what the numbers are for college educated versus non-college educated with black men and black women and Latino men and Latino women in general. I suspect that those are different. I'm talking about white people. White people only. For the whites, everybody's hot on Trump except for white women with a college degree.
Of society with a president who undermines the Constitution.
Hassan pretending that white voters are the only blacks in the U.S. I wonder why I'm pretending that. Perhaps it's because it comprises 64% of the voting bloc, or even higher percentages of the actual people who do go out and vote. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm pretending. Yeah, or it's perhaps because I'm racist. That's the other, that's the reason. It's around 70% of all voters. What are you talking about?
Every day, and is working aggressively to take away our freedom of speech and freedom of assembly.
Furious voters voicing their outrage at...
Yeah, here, Steve Kornacki, white men, white women, and the gap within the gender gap. New NBC polling data illustrates the cultural and political gulf separating white men without college degrees and white women with college degrees. The gap is massive. Here.
And their attitudes on cultural issues like you just talked about there, and also political issues in general. And what we found is, look, the white vote itself, you're looking here at the 2024 election, white voters accounted for 71%.
It wasn't 70. I apologize. It was actually 71% of the electorate. Hassan, why are you talking about 71% of the electorate?
Percent of all votes that were cast last year in the presidential race. So it's a giant group, but when you break the group down a few layers, two very different universes, political and cultural universes of white voters emerge. This is when you break it down by education. Do you have a college degree or not? And gender. And let me show you what I mean here. Take one of the questions from our poll. This is a basic one. What's your opinion of Donald Trump? Is it positive or is it negative? Now, among all white voters, it's 52% positive, 45% negative. He's mildly popular, Trump is, among all white voters. That big group is 71%. But break this down by gender and education. White men who do not have at least a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree, talk about blue-collar white men, generally speaking here, 69% positive for Trump, 28% negative by a 41-point margin. Trump is popular with this group. Now take a look at the other end of this spectrum. We're talking about white women who do have at least a bachelor's degree. This is a more economically upscale demographic here. And look at this. It's night and day. 29% positive, 67% negative. Trump is
net negative by 38 points for white women with a college degree.
38 points underwater. What that means is between these two groups of white voters, and these are each a very big chunk of the electorate, that difference there, plus 41, minus 38, adds up to a 79-point gap between how these two groups see Trump. And it's not just Trump. Take a look at this from our poll. Again, looking at these two groups on just a variety of names and topics and groups. Your opinion of J.D. Vance, night and day, Elon Musk, DEI we asked about, as you just talked about there, DOJ, the Democrats, the Republicans, the Ukrainian president. Again, the gap here from the high 50s all the way up to nearly 80 points, just completely, starkly opposite political universes that these two groups inhabit. And when you go a layer deeper here, we talk about white men, no degree, white women with a degree. There are two other groups, obviously, and you see them here. These are white men with a college degree, white women without one. But what you see is those two groups are much closer to the median. So you see what an outlier these other two are. And you also see this. White women with at least a college degree, the only group of white voters that really kind of is on the left politically, aligned with progressive causes, democratic politics. Give you an example here. It's that DEI question, right here, that we asked about in our poll. We had two big statements we read to voters. Basically, do you want to continue DEI programs, or do you think they should be ended? And again, look at this divide here. White men, no degree, end it. White men with a degree, end it, they say. White women, no degree, end it, they say, by double digits. And then white women with a college degree, completely different by a nearly 40-point margin, they say, to continue DEI. So this is one of, it's not the only, but this is one of the areas here, sort of a cultural hot button where you can see it's that group of white voters in particular who are aligned on the progressive side, who are aligned politically, we see, with the Democrats, and who are important in pushing the Democratic Party. We've seen the Democratic Party move left on cultural issues. This is a big reason why right here, just as we've seen the Republican Party go more blue collar in its messaging, this is a big reason why.
Total, complete, and utter messaging.
Now with me now is Michael McFaul.
The very fact that this is a significant point of contention for like a random white working class dude living in West Virginia implies that the Republicans have put their dick on the table and just smeared it all across every aspect of American culture. The notion that you're like, oh yeah, I hate DEI, like a lot of people will say this is just a relitigation of white supremacy, and white supremacy has always been a primary motivator for a lot of poor people, white working class people in general. Sure, fine. But the counter to that is tangible material changes that will help people, and earnestly advocating for those material changes. Actively communicating to the population that this DEI shit is just like a way to get you on board with the agenda of billionaires. But you can't do that if you yourself, inside of the duopoly, are also serving the same masters. This is a major problem with the Democrats. This is precisely the reason why the Democrats that are the most popular are ones who say, we don't want the corporate-backed candidacies. We don't want the watered-down policies. We want to change people's lives for the better. This is the issue at the heart of the Democratic Party. And instead of addressing this problem at the root cause of the Democratic Party, the Democrats are looking to rebrand neoliberalism again and repackage it. And it's so obvious, to me at least, that all of these think tanks and groups and you know, people who enjoy Twitter or whatever they're all going along with the abundance mindset or whatever Ezra Klein is now presenting as like the new solution for the Democrats. I haven't read the book. I haven't been a part of this discourse. Part of the reason why I haven't been a part of this discourse and simply observing it from the outside is because I think it's utterly irrelevant until it becomes the only thing that's relevant, because it seems like that is the push that the Democrats are going to make, judging by how many of the Democratic Party operatives and liberal media is like totally on board with Ezra Klein. I don't know if he is I don't know if his advocacy is something beyond neoliberalism, but the people who are defending it aggressively are the people who do love neoliberalism. So it makes me feel like it's just a new way to rebrand it. The abundance faction will enter the battle for the future of the Democratic Party by initially organizing 3 core groups. The abundance faction, the book came out literally a week ago, and there are already policy think tanks that are operating on this new meta. The book just came out. How is there already think tanks that are on board with this and have internalized the message from the book? Did these guys Read the book already? What is happening? The abundance faction will enter the battle for the future of the Democratic Party by initially organizing 3 core groups. Intellectuals and activists motivated by a different set of issues than those that have animated our politics over the last 50 years. A segment of business alienated from a radicalized Republican Party and drawn into the abundance faction's congenial policy agenda, and socially moderate and economically activist, growth-oriented. The Democratic Party has to torch every think tank and rebuild it from the bottom up that speaks like this, instead of changing its focus away from the small business voters to the working class. It's the working class. You have to just stop saying, oh, there's small business owners out there who have fantastic opinions. They're the backbone of the American economy. Stop. Working class, everyday Americans. That's who your focus should be on. They are the overwhelming majority. People on the left should browse this whole piece from last year at Niskanen, because with some hubris, it articulates pretty much the whole game plan for this anti-faction faction of elites to try and take over the Democratic Party and squeeze the left out, the real goal. Oh, this is the article initially from Ezra Klein that came out, I guess, a year ago, and then the book is based on that article. Is that what it is? Because it's like a collection of articles. Organizations like the Niskanen Center, the Foundation for American Innovation, the Breakthrough Institute, the Inclusive Abundance Initiative, the Abundance Network, the Abundance Institute, the Institute for Progress are growing into a coherent network. Real neoliberalism hasn't been tried. Neoliberalism cannot fail. It can only be made to fail. We will eventually do real neoliberalism one day. And once we do, we will unshackle the true potential of America. You do not understand it. You don't understand it. You don't have a high enough IQ to understand real neoliberalism. Yeah. What we have at our hands is crony neoliberalism, a corporatism, if you will. What we will have in our hands eventually is real neoliberalism. It will happen. It must happen. A House Democrat told Axios that a colleague called them after a town hall crying and said, they hate us, they hate us. One member was asked at a town hall, Democrats are too nice. Nice and civility doesn't work. Are you prepared for violence? No, we will not do labor militancy. We will not do any sort of real resistance against the growing fascist movement in this country that is already here. What we will do instead is real neoliberalism and the same things that we've been doing. I don't know enough about the abundance stuff, so I can't speak on it too much. Like I said, I haven't read the book. I haven't even read the synopsis. I'm not familiar with it. But I think Ezra Klein is a very smart guy. I will say that. And because of that, I am fearful of what the Democrats will do. I didn't say I agree with him. I just said he's a very smart guy. And I don't like when very smart guys that I don't agree with or align with ideologically get to have so much space within this now very vulnerable Democratic Party. And then they turn around and use the newfound attention that they have on themselves to rebrand the Democratic Party, to make the Democratic Party basically keep doing the same shit that caused the Democratic Party to be vulnerable to begin with, especially at a time like this. But here, we'll take a look at the abundance mindset, and I'll try to pick it apart a little bit and try to get a better understanding of what this is. Here is Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson redefining liberalism with abundance.
Thompson. To write an entire book about the most obvious sentence you've ever heard.
So you cribbed that sentence, is what you said.
Yes, absolutely.
You stole it, you put it there.
ChatGPT wrote that sentence.
Yes,
it's so easy now. And a lot of the book.
And the thing is, you wouldn't have to write a whole book about that.
Why is Ezra Klein looking more Persian every single day? I don't know. He's got that Keemstar look now. What is happening? Am I crazy? He's on his Keemstar arc, dude. He's looking like that beard is so Keemstar coded.
That sentence if you lived in a world of sanity. But we don't. We live in a world of the constitutional crises that you talked about. And we also live in a world that has affordability crises and housing crises. And a lot of these crises, unfortunately, are worst in blue states and blue cities. And so what our book is trying to do is to redefine liberalism, the Democratic Party, for an age where the Democratic Party is incredibly unpopular, but it has to be strong and popular to take on Donald Trump. But I think we have to take a good long look in a mirror and say, why is it that we've allowed the places we have the most power to become so problematic?
Leftist position of Obamacare, which was a heritage think tank policy designed in the 90s as a counter to actual socialized medicine because they were truly afraid. So they wanted to create the right-wing Heritage Foundation, came up with a solution to be like, here, we'll just use this. It was first implemented by Mitt Romney. What is this? Ban or not? Did you see the glorious unveiling of the new F-47 fighter jet today? Can't wait for the first produced unit to do some live field testing on one of those terrorist groups you actively support. Download the self-deportation app and go back to Turkey, you fucking self-righteous ass clown. Everyone who watches this channel and feeds into the delusion can go fuck themselves and dye their hair another color about it. America is back. I just read this as, I'm too stupid to understand that I will never get health care. And I also am too stupid to think that that's a, good thing. I'm too stupid, and I think that that is a good thing. I will never get health care, and I think it's awesome. Yeah. Another quintillion dollars. Hell yeah, dude. Your children are going to be learning from ChatGPT in a classroom that's 150 people because the Department of Education was cut. Okay? As the wealthy children go to schools where, they get to learn in 10-person classrooms. But hey, guess what, dude? F-47, America is back. Can't wait for a new innovative measure of lasering brown children overseas in one of the poorest countries on the fucking planet. The more we dominate them, the better I will feel about myself because I am a pathetic loser. I have no motion. I have nothing going on in my life. So I have to fantasize about incredibly poor people being killed for no reason other than, I don't know, supporting Israel, I guess. Who knows? Hell yeah, baby. America's back. Conversation by criticizing Ezra Klein's approach to it was because the ACA was not a left measure. Okay? It was a liberal measure. It was initially a right-wing measure that the liberals adopted, that the right-wing immediately fought hard against, including Mitt Romney, who actually implemented it originally in the state of Massachusetts as Romney Care when he was the governor. And claiming that that is a leftist position, vouchers are a leftist position, is insane. It is the most right-wing position. Depending on which country you're looking at, anyone that actually advocates for privatization and voucher programs is quite literally advocating to dismantle the pre-existing social safety nets. If you look at Europe, healthier social democracies that are also going through this exact same tumultuous period right now, people who are advocating for voucher programs are not the leftists. They're right-wingers. They're like actual out and about right-wingers. So yes, I'm also against the voucher programs, but I think me and Ezra are at odds here because he thinks that the voucher programs and the voucher structure and the subsidy structure is a leftist structure, whereas it's not. It is a right-wing structure. It's just that the liberals, the left party in this country, the left party in this country is the Democratic Party. They have decided that this is a, the most progressive, economically. Okay. That's not the worst, but I mean, it's not entirely untrue. The problem is, if your solution isn't for the local governments to actively outcompete the pre-existing private capitalists in that housing market by offering affordable, if not free, public housing units to normalize the housing market, then you're not actually advocating for solutions. You're just advocating for deregulation. No, it's not just rent stabilized apartments. Chatters, come on, okay? I talk about this stuff too, and this is impactful. But tens of thousands of rent stabilized apartments being warehoused. This is the process called warehousing, specifically to eventually overcome the rent control initiatives, and then and use it as a way to reduce your tax liability, and then hopefully later down the line rebuild these houses without any sort of rent control, is not the only part. It's not the giant smoking gun that you think it is. Yes, there is absolutely a need for rent stabilization and rent control, and there needs to be enforcement for violators such as this one. Rent control is good because it works in the process of decommodifying housing. It makes it costlier to be a landlord. The goal should be to make it costly to be a landlord. The goal should be to make it as unprofitable as possible to be a landlord. That is how it is. Okay? It's only one of the tools that the governments have to enforce. It's only one of the tools the government can use. It's not the only solution to the problem. It's simply one of those solutions. But tens of thousands of rent-stabilized apartments is nothing when you think about the entirety of the entirety of Manhattan. Okay, it's not that significant. I mean, it's insane that this exists, right? But it is marginal in comparison to how vast this problem truly is. So don't miss the forest for the trees. Of some glaringly obvious problems, which is people leaving blue states in droves to go to red states. Why are they doing that? Dumb people think it's taxes. It's not. It's the cost of living. People think, oh, taxes factor into that. No. Normally, taxes are not supposed to factor into that because taxes are supposed to offer you amenities that make up for it. Okay? Rich people pay the taxes, poor people get the social safety nets. It adjusts the cost of living for everyone. The issue is, of course, we don't do that in this country because our taxes don't go to that. It goes to either the military overseas, or if we're looking at local taxes, it doesn't go to the schools. It goes to the military domestically, the police departments, with their endlessly expansive budgets. I'm being reductive here. It's not the entirety of the problem, but I'm trying to explain it as to the best of my ability as quickly as possible. The reason why people leave blue areas is because they're heavily populated, and housing markets in heavily populated areas that tend to be blue are impossible to deal with. So you are looking at an option where, especially if you can work remotely, you're looking at an option of living in a much cheaper area where you actually can own a house or rent an apartment with ease versus possibly becoming homeless. So of course you're going to leave. You're going to leave states like California, not due to the taxes necessarily, but because of the housing market. Okay? That's it. That is the major reason why people leave. It's not any other reason. It's not whatever Republicans are telling you. Okay? Peace, brother. Let's continue with this abundance mind. Not true. Donald Trump doesn't care about real solutions to the problems that allowed him to easily win the election, because those solutions require anti-capitalist assessments and anti-capitalist thought and anti-capitalist legislation that goes against, like directives that go against the very same people that the very same group of people that he's, one, a part of, and two, will always actively defend the interests of. He's a fucking real estate developer. Are you out of your mind? It's not because Donald Trump is like, oh, too stupid. No, he's not. If he was stupid, he wouldn't have kept saying there's a cost of living crisis, I'm going to fix it. I think the real issue here is that his worldview in terms of deregulating and Donald Trump's worldview are not that far apart. This is the issue with neoliberalism. Like, these guys think, oh, deregulation is going to solve this issue. That's not the case. Deregulation is not going to solve this problem. Having said that, there are obviously like zoning restrictions in places like Los Angeles especially that are bad. I'm not advocating against abolishing certain zoning restrictions, especially ones that make it so that you can't build apartments or you can't build any high density housing. What I believe personally is fuck the zoning restrictions. Use the government. The government is all powerful at the end of the day. Build public housing. Build public housing. Reasons people leave blue states: cost of living, housing, and gentrification. Reasons they don't: taxes and woke. Reasons California expats leave red states: low taxes, ruining the state, and Republican policies. Ironically enough, yes. It is the social repression that Republicans advocate for that is the reason why so many people that go to red states then end up leaving the red states usually.
Transition movement that fixes people's problems by understanding people's problems.
Now, how much is it? Sure. Building an argument for.
He has a bit of a point, but not entirely. I don't think the post-war building boom led by the federal government isn't really feasible today, given federal guidelines. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. No, the answer is to just do it. Trump does whatever he wants. Look at him. He can just wield federal power, executive power, in ways that the Constitution directly was against. But he only does it in the rightward direction. He only does it in more reactionary ways that does not solve the problem. As a matter of fact, in many instances, makes it worse. No one on the left, no one on the liberal side, no one on the Democratic Party side has any semblance of courage to demonstrate a radical proposition that will truly make people's lives better, and then saying, this is what people voted for me. I'm going to do it. Shut up. What are you going to do about it?
For building, for coming together. Obviously, you're writing this book before this past election. And there's times where I'm hearing about this vision of if we can get people together to get on the same page, we can fix big issues like the housing crisis, like the environment. It feels like
Tax actually doesn't go to the MIC military-industrial complex according to federal spending and budget graphs. Wait, what? My econ professor argued the tax spending comment you made is not true. What is the tax spending comment that I made? No, the biggest spending is social safety nets in the way that they exist currently. The military-industrial complex has the largest expenditure, but it's only after Social Security payments. It's only after Medicare and Medicaid. I don't know what you told your econ professor was my position on the matter, but also he's an econ professor, so yeah. On the discretionary side, the military budgets are the most expansive, but ultimately, there are areas that you can cut from the insane budgets within the military that you could use elsewhere. That is my advocacy. Similar to how police budgets are expansive. The topic was that it's a misconception how much taxes go to the military-industrial complex. Wait, what? Okay, I can't play telephone with your econ professor. I'm confused as to just define exactly what you said to your professor and explain exactly what your professor said back if you want me to respond to it.
The financial crisis, the problem the economy had was demand. We didn't have enough demand, we didn't have enough jobs, we didn't have high enough wages, and everybody on both sides talked endlessly about demand. And in the background for a long time, for decades, there had been this building affordability crisis in healthcare, in housing, in education, in childcare, in elder care, and nobody was really doing anything about it. And then the pandemic hit, and inflation hit, and the entire, Sauron's eye of American politics moved to prices. And inflation calmed in parts, right? It's not going up the way it was, although we'll see how the tariffs go. But
I think people that hyper focus on COVID like this miss the forest for the trees. COVID only exacerbated the pre-existing class issues in this country and the wealth disparity with the K-shaped recovery. It only made the problems that existed worse. So going back to pre-COVID levels does not necessarily solve the issue, especially because that discontent before COVID gave Trump a victory in 2016 over Hillary Clinton. Relative to some of the discourse, one thing I was surprised by reading Ezra Klein is that they are explicit that unions are not the cause of high public costs of building delays. They explicitly point out countries with far higher union density also build far more efficiently and cheaply. Okay, so there are, at least one aspect of neoliberalism that they're not choosing to eviscerate, even though, what do you think voucher programs are designed for? They're designed to undermine unionized shops in general, like unionized schools, public schools.
the affordability crisis then was in full view, and it gotten worse, and it had gotten worse. And so we're in this era where people are
like, the affordability crisis for many average Americans was already here pre-COVID, was already here in 2016. It was already here. It was already here post 2008. It was here before 2008. And there has never been a serious there's never been a serious attitude within the opposition party, the Democrats, in addressing that. And that's how people became increasingly more that's how people became increasingly angrier and angrier towards the Democrats, resentful towards the Democrats. This is a major issue.
We're going to have to figure out how to solve this. And yeah, this was a bad election. Like, we're in a bad place. Everything I was like having trouble deciding during your monologue, should I laugh? Right?
Yes.
Like, this stuff.
This is Ezra. This is the problem with liberals today. They're watching a comedy show being like, should I laugh? Should I think about it? How do I feel? Let me run some focus groups. What do you feel, Ezra?
I have felt like disgusted in these last weeks. Like, this has been the...
You talk about messaging. I get to the end of the book and you bring up Operation Warp Speed, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah, so did everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about Operation Warp Speed is, like, you have a program that by some accounts saved 10 to 20 million lives around the world by inventing and accelerating the distribution of mRNA vaccines, and yet nobody talks about it.
Nobody talks about it.
I think the Democrats don't talk about it because it's kind of awkward to give credit to a program that was initiated under Donald Trump. But the weirdest thing of all is that Donald Trump doesn't talk about it. In fact, he's one of the biggest skeptics of mRNA science right now. So it really is bizarre. Like, imagine if we landed a man on the moon and nobody talked about the Apollo program because it just wasn't something that either party could bring up. We saved even more lives with Operation Warp Speed than we saved with the Apollo program, and no one talks about it. I think it's important to take really, really clear lessons from what Operation Warp Speed did. We set a very clear goal. We said in 10 months, we're going to develop a therapy that saves people's lives. We're going to get it to everybody if they want it. And we're going to make the cost of this world-saving therapeutic, maybe the best medicine in the world, $0.00. We set a goal. We identified what the bottlenecks were going to be. We took away the bottlenecks that existed, and we met the goal. Frankly, that's how government should work more often. We should have mayors and governors saying...
It feels like these guys want to do neoliberal China. Like... We gotta have a bottom-up approach where localities are more hands-on with the demands of their constituents, and then they bring it up the ranks, and the federal government has more power to be able to basically build whatever they want to. And it's crazy that the argument is just like, instead of socialism with Chinese characteristics, we got to do neoliberalism with Chinese characteristics. I don't know. I don't understand, like, how... I think this is a crisis of too much education, maybe. I don't know. Where you just, like, read too many books. This is a problem that also persists in the left as well, like Marxist-Leninist left as well, where your brain is so warped that you can't envision a world outside of, like, the hardline Marxist orthodoxy. Like, there's no evolution there at all. And for these guys, it's like... It's the same. There's no world beyond free market principles. Unleashing the free market upon the working class. This is going to work. Don't you blame books for this? No, this is too much. They read too many books. And they speak in a way that other people who have at least, like, read too many books or want to act like they've read too many books, they look at these guys and they go, this is awesome. These guys are solid.
There's a governor saying, we're going to set a goal for housing supply. I want to add 100,000 units, and I'm not going to let anybody tell me no.
I mean, this is something that I've advocated for as well, by the way. For me, they're not wrong on this. It's just, I want that. I want that really bad. I want that as a publicly funded public housing initiative, not like deregulating housing and, like, allowing the private sector to unleash their own opinion on what must be done.
Care about climate change, so I'm going to add this amount of energy that we're going to create from solar and wind and geothermal, and I'm not going to let anybody tell me no. But for some reason, outside of a crisis, we don't have this kind of outcome-oriented politics. This book is about putting outcomes over processes. It's about setting a North Star with a big, bold, beautiful sci-fi vision in the first 3 pages of the book and saying, we can do this, but in order to do it, we have to get out of our own way.
But you're talking about long-term visions. You mentioned having this lens of abundance. It's sort of what you're proposing here. But I think you go out and you talk to people, and we are the politics of short-term results. Everything is about what can you get me now. We're not even thinking about the giant medical miracle of Operation Warp Speed from a few years ago. Like, how does something like this resonate with folks who are on their phones? They're flipping through. They want an answer right now. They want to be angry right now. They want action right now. How do you speak to a grander idea when it feels like the world is moving faster than that?
I'm so glad you asked. So you don't get long-term results in politics without short-term results. And this is a thing I think Democrats have really forgotten. We've been doing high-speed rail in California for a long time. Nobody's winning any elections on that. Under Joe Biden, they passed $42 billion for rural broadband. It passed in, I think, 2021, early 2022. By the end of 2024, you know how many people were hooked up to rural broadband? A couple dozen. We passed $7.5 billion for electric vehicle chargers to build a nationwide EV charger network. We built a couple dozen by the end of his presidency. You cannot win elections if you're passing billions of dollars that people cannot feel within 2 or 3 or 4 years. And that does not have to happen. In the time that California has not built 500 miles of high-speed rail, China built 23,000 miles of high-speed rail. We can do this, making sure that money through government flows faster.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that attitude. I don't hate that statement. There is one thing that China has that I think is something that Americans are allergic to or have been taught to fear, which is, of course, central planning. So, and also prosecuting wealthy and powerful people when they step out of line. You know, those are two things I think that play a role. Like, I'm sorry, the private public partnership for the high-speed rail initiative in California, if this happened in China, would lead to capital punishment for virtually every party member that collaborated with the private contractors that refused to build this railroad out in an expeditious manner. It would literally lead to like genuine criminal penalties for everyone, all the way from Gavin Newsom down to regular like local administrators and every single private contractor that they utilized along the way. And on top of that, there would be no like, oh, how do we reroute the high-speed rail? We got to take it through this locality or over that one. Like, none of that. They would just be like, no, you're building it. Shut the fuck up. We're the government. Yeah, Gavin Newsom would have been disappeared like Jack Ma, only to come back and sing the praises of the regime shortly thereafter. Forced to play ball.
Is how you make sure that people know government actually matters in their lives. When it goes too slowly, they don't know. And then somebody comes out and says, oh, vote for me. I'm the strong man. I alone can fix it. I will make it work. And then you run the risk that they're going to believe him.
Now, in looking at the Democratic field right now, Democrats, I think, are hearing this message, and then they're saying, maybe we should go on more podcasts. Feels like they're taking baby steps to this. Who is carrying this message? Who do you see as somebody, like, we come out here and we talk to audiences in between acts, and more often than not, they're desperate for an answer, whether that looks like resistance or whether that looks like a vision of the future that they can get behind. And we're desperately missing some of those voices out there. Do you see this message being carried by anybody articulately?
I see people in Congress and the Senate and governors explicitly picking up this message. I mean, someone asked, a colleague of Ezra Klein's, the New York Times, asked, where's the Democrats' Project 2025? And Richie Torres, Representative Richie Torres from New York, just tweeted a photo of the cover of this book and without any words, just said, this is my idea of Project 2025 for the Democratic Party.
That feels lazy. That feels lazy on their part. Wow, yeah. Oh, there you go. Like a picture of War and Peace. The second part. We'll just do the second part.
We're happy to do the work of writing the book if people are going to be taking up the ideas. But people really are taking up the ideas, and that's cool. But I want to say one other thing. You know, you talked about what's the value of a positive vision. And I think it's a fair question. Politics is incredibly negative right now. But I really do think that there's a lot of voters that are starving for not just a negative identity for their party, but a positive identity, right? It's easy for Democrats to say right now why Donald Trump sucks. You can do that over and over and over again. You could do 10 hours of the constitutional crises that he's starting.
You can make a television show about that every night.
You can make a weekly television show about it. What's the positive vision? All right, Donald Trump sucks. What are we going to place him with? What problems are we going to solve if we...
They brought up Richie Torres.
I really do think of the cover as Representative Richie Torres from New York just tweeted a photo of the cover of this book, and
you shouldn't associate positively with Richie fucking Torres, dude. Are you crazy? That's crazy. That's actually wild. Positive association with Richie Torres? Oh my God. They hate us. Democrats confront their own Tea Party. Yo, Richie Torres being the face of the abundance movement is hilarious. You're right.
Lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans. Some Republicans facing heat over supporting the cuts from DOGE. Meanwhile, lots of Democrats being told they're not doing enough to push back against the Trump administration. CNN's Eva McKen is in North Las Vegas, Nevada, where Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just wrapped up a big event. Eva, what happened?
Jake, what struck me about this Fight the Oligarchy tour is there is a very deliberate effort to be nonpartisan. You heard...
Oh, they weren't saying positively about Richie
without
Torres?
any words. Just said, this is my idea of Product 2025 for the Democratic Party.
Feels lazy. That feels lazy on their part. Wow, yeah. Oh, there you go. Take a picture of War and Peace. The second part. We'll just do the second part.
We're happy to do the work of writing the book if people are going to be taking up the ideas. But people really are taking up the ideas, and that's cool. But I want to say one other thing. You know, you talked about what's the value of a positive vision. And I think it's a fair question. Politics is incredibly negative right now. But I really do think that there's a lot of voters that are starving for not just a negative identity for their party, but a positive identity, right? It's easy for Democrats to say right now why Donald Trump sucks. You can do.
I'll be honest. I like nothing that they said is that offensive. I just know their background. That's what motivates me into thinking that this is not going to be a positive vision for a real, tangible solution, and instead will be rebranded neoliberalism. Because the way they package their ideas is not offensive at all. They actually are doing a decent amount of room reading, I would say, in an effort to build a brand around abundance. It's basically like rebranding it, but with like leftist aesthetics almost. I think that's the goal here, is to capture the attention potentially of or it's a failed way. It's going to inevitably fail, because if their goal is to capture the attention of like the progressive activist left base of the party into getting on board with like deregulation being the solution to housing, for example, it's not going to work. It's going to fail. It might accidentally cause the Democrats to advocate for real change, though, even if their solutions are dog shit. So this is almost like a way to retriangulate the Democratic Party back to like Obama 2007, 2008. He wasn't talking positively about Richie Torres. I know. I saw that. It's fine. That's not the main point at all. That's what it is. Progressive aesthetics with no genuine interest of following through on any kind of policy that hurts capital, and only doing stuff that Clinton would do as well, is going to breed even further resentment, just like Obama did last time. Now, people will say it was because he was black, and there's truth to that. But I think if Obama had followed through on benefits that went beyond the ACA, for example, with a public option, moved us closer towards single payer, for example, Americans would not associate him. Americans would not have the most, the people that voted for him would not have gone the way of Trump. There wouldn't be so many Obama to Trump voters, for example. Anyway, let's get back to AOC and Bernie Sanders.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said several times, no matter if you disagree with me on a whole host of issues, if you are willing to fight for working class voters, then you belong here. And that really flies in the face of how the left is often characterized as dogmatic and not pragmatic. But that is not what we are seeing here. Senator Sanders says that he understands
the
that
left always
both parties are
characterizes that?
captured by big moneyed interests. And this is a real effort, regardless of ideology, to call back the working class and bring them into coalition.
This isn't just about Republicans. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too. We, as a community, must choose and vote for Democrats and elected officials who know how to stand for the working class.
And so, Jake, you heard the Congresswoman there. She didn't spare her own party, even though she didn't mention Senator Schumer by name. This is just one stop over the next several days that they will make. And I'll end with this. There is clearly an appetite for this message. It's unclear if they are peeling off some of the conservative voters that may have voted for Trump. That is certainly the goal here. But the Democratic establishment cannot afford to ignore this energy center of the party. There may be some that try to dismiss this, but they have a lot of enthusiasm here on the ground.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
She gets it. That CNN journalist gets it. No, that's the point. No, that is the goal. And I think that a lot of people who have been yelling at me for the past day also don't understand it either. While I am also feeling as though there's a lot more room for directing this mobilization from both AOC and Bernie Sanders and this tour that they're doing. And it's not just about like talking about how shitty everything is, and then leaving people directionless, leaving people rudderless. And I talked extensively about how to fix that. I think doing something similar to what Zoran's been doing in New York in the mayoral race is a much more solid approach here. But like mobilizing this support, this base of support towards individual causes where you can protest and agitate is a way to not only draw home the message, but it's also a way for you to be able to. It's also a way for Bernie and AOC to be able to basically show that this message is effective and can lead to tangible change. Okay? It's not just about like screaming tax the rich. It's about going like, it's not about saying we're not going to give another dollar to Israel. It's about going to and doing a rally outside of the courthouse where where Mahmoud Khalil has a deportation proceeding. Like, it's about facilitating real change. It's about using the momentum and using the popularity towards singular issues of harm in a way to possibly make change with this direct demonstration of support. I think this is the type of stuff that they could be doing, and I wish that they would do more of that. But I think right now, the goal here seemingly is to show the Democratic Party that there is still a lot of momentum behind Bernie's left populist politics. Now, will they listen? I don't think so. Is it a foolhardy endeavor if it stays in this? If it just simply is just doing rallies over and over again? Yes. That's why I'm saying I think it'd be better served if there were direct organizing initiatives associated with this. Instead of just saying, join community organizations, work with the community organizations, and get people to support said community organizations at your rallies, for example. That, I think, is a better usage of the time and space that they have right now and the place that they're occupying right now, beyond simply just saying the Democratic Party needs to see the popular momentum behind Bernie's politics and reshape their message. Although I do think that, to a certain degree, Bernie has been able to make a lot of these ideas that were not even considered in mainstream media significantly more palatable.
Wages that Democrats would do a lot better with voters if they looked less like diplomats searching for a compromise and looked more like prize fighters for the working class.
This isn't just about Republicans. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too. But what that means is that we as a community must choose and vote for Democrats and elected officials who know how to stand for the working class. I want you to look at every level of office around and support brawlers who fight, because those are the ones who can actually win against Republicans. Let's be real about that.
Brawlers. I assume you approve this message.
100%, absolutely. Democrats are in a crisis right now. They're on life support. They have a testicular fortitude problem. They are not fighting nearly as hard as they need to fight for the American people, as was seen last week during this CR vote in the Senate. It's a problem. And for me, it's not about the parties, because the parties are going to kind of do their thing. It's about the people rising up and holding the parties accountable. Democrats have fighters. Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, the whole squad, Greg Casar, Pramila Jayapal, and governors and mayors across the country are fighters. But we need some of the OGs in the party to elevate, uplift the younger people
or do they
and take a step back.
Do they need to step aside?
Or step aside, because we need to hear new, fresh, bold voices. That's what the American people want. And if the party doesn't do that, the party is about to be finished.
I hope
that AOC, Pramila Jayapal, Greg Cesar, I hope they're the new face of the Democratic Party because Republicans will be winning elections all over the country if that is the face of the Democratic Party. Are you?
I mean, y'all
listen, a district like mine that Joe Biden won by 10 points, okay, 10 points. Kamala Harris won by half a point. Okay, I won by 6.5 points, 24,000 votes in a district that has 85,000 more Democrats than Republicans. Why?
And you're right.
Because the
but
Democrats
you ran against a cornball candidate. You had
he was your friend.
He was not my friend.
He was your friend.
Against you, who was not a strong candidate. And we still
that we agree on.
We still have consultants and big money controlling the Democratic Party, compromising
She did outperform Kamala Harris in her
Come on
district.
now.
Trump did,
Sure.
Trump
He
did
knows
better
this.
than
But here's my point. The New York, look no further than New York, where issues like cashless bail have been a disaster, issues like sanctuary state status, congestion pricing. In districts like mine, where Democrats on paper should win big, they're losing. And so if the messenger is AOC, who, by the way, was originally from my district, she grew up in Yorktown, not the Bronx. If AOC is the face of the Democratic Party in swing districts all across this country, she will mobilize voters way more than Nancy Pelosi ever did.
Let me just add that.
Yeah, the thing that this man is refusing to recognize, because the moron, is Bernie Sanders. For one reason or another, Bernie Sanders is seen as an authentic figure in ways that AOC is not by swing voters. AOC has a lot of national prominence, but unfortunately, alongside that national prominence, she has a lot of haters as well. Bernie, on the other hand, seemingly, while advocating for quite similar opinions on issues, is seen as a much more powerful and much more popular figure. And no, I don't think it's I don't think it's entirely due to AOC being a woman and Bernie being a white man. No, I don't think it's just that. Although that certainly factors into the equation, of course. The notion that, like, if the entirety of the Democratic Party across the board were Bernie-style figures, the Republicans would never even have a single fucking election that they win ever again. If the entirety of the Democratic Party resembled Bernie-style politics and actively pushed for it and voted for it and demonstrated real change at the legislative level, there would never be another Republican election won. Nah, that's cope, to be honest. It absolutely is not cope. What are you talking about? We have a Bernie-style leadership historically in the Democratic Party that led to basically half of a century of Democratic Party dominance. What are you talking about? We still eat off of the advancements made under FDR. New Deal Democrats shaped the first half of the last 100 years, and the Reaganite neoliberalism has shaped American politics for the last half of the 100 years. When Democrats were dominant, Republicans would be forced to follow suit, would be getting their notes from the Democrats. The agenda was shaped by moving the needle in the direction of progress. And a lot of American prosperity took place as a consequence of that. And then the Republicans basically turned everything around. I would say Carter kickstarted that process fairly aggressively. And foreign policy played a major role in this as well. But Carter's neoliberalism made way for Ronald Reagan to stab the country in the heart. You're overlooking a century of Red Scare propaganda? Sure, that plays a role in this. But let me tell you, Americans who can be convinced on idiotic things such as concentration camps at the border will magically solve your cost of living crisis can also be convinced that anti-capitalist policies will truly solve the cost of living crisis if advocated for aggressively, earnestly. Bernie Sanders is unironically a living, breathing example of this. On the global stage, he does not carry himself nor present himself as a radical socialist or a Marxist-Leninist or anything like that, and he's not. But the policies that he's always firmly held committed to are all inherently anti-capitalist policies. They are policies that impact capital, harm harm the profit motive at the behest of improving social welfare. His popularity speaks for itself. That's it. So you don't even have to present yourself as a Marxist-Leninist, because obviously, yes, Red Scare propaganda is incredibly powerful. America has a genuine force in terms of anti-communism that is irreconcilable. There is no way of dealing with that. But one example I will present to you is the accidental good policy that even the Kamala camp advocated for, which was price controls. She presented it in a way that liberals could also associate positively with. And that was her most successful policy, because Americans don't give a fuck. When you say, I'm going to bring these prices down no matter what, they don't care. They're like, hell yes, I want that shit. I want it now. I want it bad. Please give it to me. I don't care what you do. That's why I used to joke and say, like, if she literally went on stage and was like, I am going to present to you a unique opportunity to make prices 10% cheaper across the board. And the only way to do that is by fucking, putting the Walton family in permanent prison, or maybe even capital punishment towards them. Americans will be on board with it. You'd be scared of how excited Americans will be at that, because they just want solutions. It's not that fucking hard. That's it. They just want solutions, man. The Democrats won't even broach that subject matter, unfortunately.
The counterpoint within the Democratic Party to what AOC is saying from, this is Elisa Slotkin. She gave the Democratic response to the State of the Union address much more of a moderate voice in the party. Listen.
I can't just chain myself to the White House and become an activist full time, because you and others here are going to call me for things that you need. All of those things require me to be more than just an AOC. I can't do what she does, because we live in a purple state.
Oh my, shut up.
And I'm a pragmatist. I gotta save things for my people.
See,
things are getting messy.
Come on,
there.
son.
It's getting very messy.
That's white flag energy right there.
Names are
that's
being
white flag
put on the
energy right there.
No, I think she's right.
What do you mean you think she's right? First of all, even choosing her to give the response to Governor Trump.
That's your party
Governor Trump. I should call him Governor Trump.
That's
President Trump is a problem.
You should be the chairman, by the way. She is right in the sense that it's easy to throw grenades. You can be an AOC and throw grenades all day in a safe district.
Republican running for Republican in office, Mike Lawler, sitting across from former Republican leader in the New York City Council, talking to fucking Jamal Bowman. Like, what is happening here? Why is the market so flooded with Matt Iglesias prototypes? Yeah, man, I think I don't want to hear from you as a New York Republican. I think your word doesn't mean anything about the fucking future of the Democratic Party. Like, why would anybody listen to you? Except that's all the Democrats listen to. That's why they keep losing.
District not have to account for anything. There's a huge delta between the hype of AOC and the accomplishments of AOC. And frankly, if you look at that tour she was just on with Bernie Sanders, right? It was called the Fighting Oligarchy Tour, right? They essentially traveled the country and spoke to an echo chamber of people who already agree with them. How is she and Bernie Sanders, with their message, going to attract people in swing districts by the Fighting Oligarchy Tour?
I wonder is maybe what they're looking at is actually...
They're going to swing districts. Like, they were in Nevada. What are you talking about? The entire point of the Fighting Oligarchy Tour is to go to swing districts. Every place that they go to is a fucking swing district, dumbass. Sometimes directly right-wing areas. Why would you ever listen to this guy, man? Is it because you accidentally thought he was Matt Iglesias? And that's the only guy you respond to?
Maybe what they're looking at, Joe, is what the Republicans did, which is all of the guys who stood around screaming in Congress and not passing any legislation, those folks are in power now. They won at the end of the day.
I think that this is where I will actually agree with you. I do think that there is a difference between Bernie Sanders and AOC going and talking to our base, and a difference between the senator who was just elected, has to show results for her state, has to, in a swing state, a battleground state, and she has to deliver something, versus AOC and Bernie are just, they're talking about the base. I will say, I was at the DNC in 2017 after almost this exact same situation. Bernie Sanders asked Chuck Schumer, let me go out and talk to our base. This is exactly what he did in 2016. This is 2017. This is deja vu. You know what happened when Nancy Pelosi everybody was asking for her to resign. You know what she did? She embraced the new generation of the Democratic Party, lifted them up, and said, you know what? I'm going to step aside after the midterm elections, and I'm going to lift everybody else up.
And that's why she worked to block a ranking member of a committee.
That also
the tens of millions of people who are staying home, they're staying home because we're not elevating new voices in the Democratic
No,
Party.
you're not. Your
Those
chairs
people
are
mobilized.
I think too, this is not just a Chuck Schumer thing. I think it's happening pretty broadly among some of the older contingent in the Democratic Party.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I have to say, I have such fucking news politics fatigue already. We're what, 2 months into the sort of presidency, and it is the velocity of bullshit.
Stupidity.
If you can get 1 million plays in a day because Trump got bopped on the nose by a fucking boom mic, it just the appetite is, it seems endless for it. It just feels, it's exhausting. I'm kind of having to check out. And I know that people say, oh, well, it's a luxurious position. You don't need to pay attention to politics. It's a luxurious position for you to be in. People at the bottom, they do need to pay attention to politics. It's an interesting stat because actually the most educated, wealthiest people are the ones that spend the most time consuming news and talking about politics. It's the people at the bottom rung of the ladder that don't. So that's...
Yeah, no shit. That's kind of the fucking problem here. That's why we got Donald Trump in office. Yes, if you're at the bottom rung of society, you understandably see politics for what it truly is. Something that rich people are doing with one another that is not going to impact your life in any way and only will impact your life in a negative way. Doesn't matter if you pay attention to it or not. That's why I'm so glad I had those 2 conversations with 2 different Uber drivers yesterday. Okay? One was activated through podcast into believing a whole bunch of nonsense. The other one was completely tapped out of the subject after voting for Kamala Harris and not really liking the Democrats either. The reason why the second person was not really invested in politics is exactly what I'm talking about. If you can't activate people like her, I mean, think about it. Like, she's a black woman in the United States of America who's genuinely thinking about leaving the country, okay? Cost of living is out of control. And she sees the political instability, and she's like, maybe it's time to fucking leave. Like, we're literally seeing if we can penny pinch our way out of here. This is a person that drives Uber. In any case, the reason why that person, I think I demonstrated fairly well to those who have the capacity to understand what I was doing in that conversation. The reason why that person is checked out is because there's no association for her with any sort of tangible policies that will improve her life. She does not hear that from the Dems at all. She also doesn't think the Dems are being genuine when they advocate for things. She literally said, yeah, Trump does stuff, but when he says something, he's going to do something. That's weakness twofold. That's it.
It's not true. I'm just fucking exhausted. I'm so...
You're allowed to be exhausted. It's ridiculous. Newsweek wrote an article about how one of the names of one of our podcast guests, who's a good friend of mine, Michael Costa, his name was misspelled accidentally
on the feed.
On the feed.
On
and
the
so
feed.
Newsweek.
Is that you, Jamie?
It wasn't even misspelled. I don't know. It was miscapitalized. It's the letter had a capitalization too.
The defense rests its case here.
It wasn't even misspelled, right? It was M I, Michael Costa. Like me, Kyle Costa or something.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a headline.
It's a fucking article in Newsweek.
You ever think that your career would result in you having typos for a headline, Jamie?
I can't. I don't even know which ones we've missed. I'm sure there's been other ones. That's just the first one.
100%. What happens? It happens. People make mistakes. You're typing things in.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's an article that we're being called out for a typo.
Must be
That's an art, but it's just anything for clicks, man.
So
anything for clicks.
That was something that I noticed, a trend that I've noticed over the last couple of years. Legacy media is really struggling to garner attention itself. It seems like fewer and fewer people are listening to it. We saw that over the last election. You know, it seems to me like the best way that legacy media can gain traffic is to talk about independent media.
Yeah.
How many times are we seeing headlines about Andrew Huberman or about the right-wing manosphere pipeline and how it's getting people to do this? Or the other side, like, why is there not a Joe Rogan of the left? Like, you know, whatever the headline is, more and more the way that legacy media is able to achieve traffic is only in reference to independent media.
Yes.
So then, as opposed to us being...
He's not wrong. I mean... This is correct. These are two guys that I don't agree with, but he's right about this. I think the real problem with legacy media, however, is that legacy publishers have dropped the ball spectacularly over and over again for two reasons. One, for a good reason. Good reason as in, like, there's a good reason why people are saying, I don't trust you any longer, like Israel-related coverage, for example. And also for a very bad reason. A very bad reason why people don't trust legacy media is because of the faucet of misinformation that is infinitely easier to understand and read. These two issues work side by side with one another. If you are serially wrong in ways that people can comprehend quickly, they're not going to trust you any longer. Meanwhile, you have people hamming up parasocial relationships on the independent side of things where people genuinely think like, oh, Joe Rogan is my friend. Hassan is my friend. He's in my living room all day, every day. There's no way to compete with people like myself if you're a faceless journalist. That's it. Especially if the parasocial relationship-inducing commentary is also chock full of ridiculous misinformation that corresponds to the preconceived biases that people have. That's a huge problem. That is a huge issue. It's especially an issue for someone like myself because, like, I do work in combating misinformation with regular frequency. Ironically enough, my liberal naysayers and independent media consistently say I'm a misinformer. I'm the Alex Jones of the left. But there's a reason why a lot of these mainstream outlets understand my position in the independent sphere as someone who has an open position, who's not shy about revealing his position, but will actively go after misinformation and combat misinformation directly. Okay? So because of that, I can't work without real journalism. I can't work without real journalism. Joe Rogan can. He's just going to shoot the shit anyway. There's real journalism out there, and these guys still make shit up. Right? I can't just simply make shit up. That's not my job. My job is to look at media and analyze it with a critical lens. But that still requires there to be real journalism happening, which is why I'm so fucking terrified. But my point is, it's very hard to try and generate support for someone who is serially engaging in parasocial confirmation bias. It's virtually impossible. Joe Rogan doesn't need to convince his audience of his positions. His audience likes him because of his positions. Someone like myself, on the other hand, has to convince the audience of the positions because these positions are not one that are readily available in the wild. And kind of the same goes for mainstream news as well. Like, they have to maintain, as a part of their job, mainstream news outlets have to maintain the neoliberal agenda. They have to maintain the idea that everything you're experiencing, whether it be the cost of living crisis or whatnot, is actually fine. It's actually normal. It's a normal and healthy part of the process of capitalism. It's okay. Things are not as bad as you think they are. They have to normalize the harm that you're experiencing. It's a big part of what the Fourth Estate does. So in that regard, it's also very difficult for them to do that, especially in times of crisis. So when crisis comes around and the media keeps doing the same things that they do all the time to normalize the harm and pain that you're experiencing, only hyper-focus on the viewpoints of, like, I don't know, small business owners or whatever. Ultimately, people like Joe Rogan, who are going to take advantage of that resentment and the anger that people feel, are going to win out against mainstream news, and they're going to do it with a chock full of misinformation. This dynamic exists in the duopoly and the last election cycle that took place. You have the Kamala Harris institution defenders running against a guy who wants to put a brick through the institutions. At a time when there's so much economic volatility, so much anger and resentment towards the living conditions that people experience, that they directly attribute to the institutions, yeah, of course people voted for the institution breaking party. Because the institution breaking party saw that anger and resentment and said, you're right to be angry, and you should be angry at, you know, more appropriate targets, obviously, not fucking like, you know, corporations of the powerful, but instead gay corporations and the gay powerful, or DEI. It is, however, alarming that so many people primarily get their information from the likes of Joe, and that they get their notes from Joe. Like, the things that Joe cares about, they care about too. And because he's so susceptible to misinformation that corresponds to his biases, people end up adopting the most idiotic positions, like the first Uber driver that we talked to. We're talking about Trans Sesame Street. Terrifying prospect for the future of this country.
Downstream from them, they're now downstream from us.
Yeah, and anything masculine is right wing.
Huh.
Anything. You cannot be masculine. Like, you cannot be interested in physical fitness, anything.
It's a pipeline to being right wing.
Yes. You can't like fast cars.
Nope.
You're not allowed to. You're not even allowed to like Teslas anymore, which are
Misogynist.
the fastest cars.
Yep.
Yeah, you're a misogynist. You're probably racist, maybe a Nazi. I'm going to put a swastika in your car just to let everybody know. There was some really fucking stupid graph that someone put up of how right-wing social media and new media people
That was the Media
dominate.
Matters study. Yeah. This is
And
interesting.
I was
Jamie,
at the
can you try
top
and
of the
find that?
list. I was at the top of the list, and I was like, I feel like the way Caitlyn Jenner must have felt like when she won Woman of the Year. Like, it's so quick. I got to the top of the list. I'm not even right wing. Just because I support Trump, I support him over the rest of the fucking nonsense that was going on when you.
I hate this. I hate that he represents the median voter here. What do you mean I'm right wing? I just voted for the most right wing administration of all time after endorsing said administration. Joe Rogan is not a car guy? Yes, he is. You're wrong. He literally is a car guy. He's like a Porsche collector. He doesn't talk about it as much any longer, but he's always been he's a big car guy. He used to talk about it all the fucking time. Actually, that just unlocked old memories of me listening to Joe Rogan. He fucking loved cars back in the day. He used to talk about them nonstop. So many episodes. He would talk about his Porsche. He never actually talks about cars anymore. Now that you think about it, holy shit.
Damn, this guy's good.